Good afternoon and good evening, everyone. My name is Nate. I also go by HockeyBoy8, and this video we are going to be discussing the potential for a potentially strong tropical system moving into the Gulf of Mexico that could be potentially impacting either portions of northern Mexico, either areas along coastal Texas. Oh my goodness, I can hear myself. Jeez. My bad. As well as places near Louisiana, maybe even Mississippi and Alabama. So all these questions will probably not be answered within this video, but we will discuss the possibilities as well as the strengths of this system as this continues to move on through to the north. So if you guys are new to my channel, please be sure to like the video. Liking the video gets this information out to as many people as possible. That would be greatly appreciated, especially since, you know, at this point, we need to just continue to try and inform as many people as possible, try and keep people safe. As well as subscribe if you're new and turn on notifications, because I do upload videos as well as do live streams on these situations as much as I possibly can. Basically, as I said, just trying to give you all the latest update, up-to-date, and accurate information as I possibly can. Looking at the satellite imagery here of the United States, a lot of stuff here to talk about. First off, we have 3 invests here in the Atlantic Basin. We have one right here in the main development region with which is Invest 90. I believe this is 98L. Invest 98L right here. You also have another invest right here, which is Invest 97L. And then we also have this tropical wave right here, which is looking better organized, a lot better organized here within the past couple of hours. Right over here, just to the south of Jamaica and Hispaniola. The thing about it is with these systems is Invest 97L and Invest 98L are most likely going to continue to try and ride out a bit further out to sea. So these ones aren't going to be the ones that we are going to talk about. The one that we're going to talk about here is Invest 99L and how this could propagate further towards the north and west and how that could potentially impact areas along the Gulf of Mexico. So if we basically zoom in here to the True Color satellite, just for this area here in the Western Atlantic, you can clearly see this thing has a giant swirling counterclockwise mass to it. You have a lot of showers and thunderstorms that are starting to kind of rotate within a center area. And this thing might be trying to get a lot better organized as this thing continues to move further and further towards the north and west. The National Hurricane Center is actually anticipating this to have an 80% chance of formation over the next 5 days, and as it should, to be completely honest with you. There's another thing here too that I want you guys to pay attention to as well. We have an upper level low pressure system with an upper level trough that's somewhere over here near Cuba, and what this is doing is you can kind of already see this giant swirl of counterclockwise motion within the tops of these thunderstorms. So you have these showers and thunderstorms that are being sheared off to the north. You have some of these showers and thunderstorms that are being pushed off a bit further towards the west. And then you have some of these showers and thunderstorms that are being pushed off to the south. So this giant counterclockwise spin here, this very broad low pressure system, is basically creating a little bit of shear and a little bit of dry air out in front of this tropical system. So those are the big things there to watch out for as this thing continues to progress. However, if it does bust through that wall relatively easily, the areas here in the Gulf of Mexico are very open and very unstable, and that is the reason why I am more or less concerned as to if this thing does get into the Gulf of Mexico, we could be talking about a potentially strong hurricane to even a major hurricane on its approach inland. If we take a look at the water vapor imagery, this tells us the exact same thing that I was just mentioning. You can see the loop here. You can see the giant counterclockwise swirl. The actual low pressure system might actually be a little bit further north of Cuba, but you can still see, regardless, this giant counterclockwise spin in the atmosphere. The big thing with the water vapor imagery is, depending upon how bright the colors are, it tells you how moist the environment is. And so, for instance, this white area right here within the actual invest, that's very moist atmosphere that's around it. However, if you take a look at some of the areas around it, like somewhere behind it near the Lesser Antilles or areas in front of it, and how you have these darker colors, that actually indicates a little little bit of gaps of dry air, and that could potentially influence the actual tropical system as to whether or not it can strengthen further, or whether or not the wind shear could actually displace some of these showers and thunderstorms from the center area of low pressure. Because for those of you who are new and may not know how tropical systems actually want to form, they actually need showers and thunderstorms to be able to form around a basic center area so that it can surround itself and form its eye. So in order for it to get an eye, it needs to surround itself with a bunch of showers and thunderstorms. And the big thing here with wind shear and dry air is that with dry air, it actually limits thunderstorms from developing. So if it can't get thunderstorms around its said eye, then it won't be able to intensify further. With wind shear, if you do have your showers and thunderstorms that form around there, the wind shear can actually move the thunderstorms away from the center area of low pressure. So that's the big thing here, is that will those factors come into play here as this continues to propagate further towards the north and west? And if this thing does break that wall, how strong will this be as it approaches the Gulf of Mexico? That is the big question there. Looking at the HWRF model, I was actually looking at it a little bit ahead of time, and I was kind of reacting to it a bit further. But the HWRF model, or at least the two different runs of the HWRF model, is very, I'll say, different. I'll say it's very different. You can take a look, see here from the HWRF model. Looks like a bunch of swirling mass of showers and thunderstorms out in the middle of nowhere. But the big thing here is that this right here is actually Jamaica. That right there is Jamaica, and this is a portion of Haiti up there. And you can see as this continues to propagate further and further towards the north and west, there's the Cayman Islands on the top part of your screen as it continues to move on through. Now you can start to see portions of, I believe that is Honduras, and I believe that is correct. Yep, and so now it's starting to get closer and closer towards the Yucatan Peninsula. Most of these showers and thunderstorms actually are near the Yucatan Peninsula, which is right about here. You also have Cuba, which is right there. And the big thing here as well is that with the HWRF model, this actually takes the system and splits the two land masses, and so it stays more over open water. And if it does that, then you could expect a stronger system than what some other models actually say, mainly because land interaction basically slows the system down. It slows a lot of the rotation because it has a lot more interaction with friction, especially with trees, buildings, all sorts of stuff like that to basically slow the showers and thunderstorms. So if it stays over water, it'll continue to intensify further and further. If it hits land, it'll weaken a bit. If not, it'll stay at the same strength. And so according to the HWRF model, it hits a little bit of land, so not too much of a weakening trend there. And then as it continues to propagate further towards the north and west, of course, that's when it starts to intensify. And then according to this model run, we actually have this as a potentially strong hurricane next to areas near Galveston in Houston, which is located somewhere right about here, of course. Now, if this isn't set in stone by any stretch of the imagination, as a matter of fact, this is just one opinion of several from this exact model run, and even then, there are other opinions from other models that say otherwise. So that's the big thing here, is that it's not just one model, it's several models that we have to take into account. So speaking of several models here, let's take a look at another model that is currently running right now as we speak. So we're getting the latest information from this. And as we take a look at the wide view here, I'll actually go back behind a little bit and we'll take a look. Yeah, we'll continue with this for right now, and then we'll get into the nitty gritty right after this. So look at this here. You see all the swirling mass of showers and thunderstorms indicated, much similar to what happened with satellite. But then as this continues to propagate further and further, we're going to want to watch that elongated area of showers and thunderstorms right over here. And depending upon where the actual center area of low pressure forms, that could determine as to where this tropical system could potentially go in the long run. So if it forms somewhere up here, we could be talking about areas here from the Florida Panhandle all the way up to Louisiana near Lake Charles. If it forms somewhere down more towards the Yucatan Peninsula, maybe somewhere down here, then we could be talking about somewhere along Texas into the border of Texas and Mexico. And then if it forms somewhere down here near Belize and Honduras, then we could be talking about somewhere south of the border of the US and Mexico and further down south. So it really will have to depend upon what happens here sometime tonight into tomorrow, as well as into Friday morning, as to where this actual tropical system ends up developing. And that's as I said, the big question here. Now, according to the GFS model here, by Friday morning, we do have this tropical system that ends up forming somewhere south of Cuba. And as this continues to propagate further and further northward, you'll see that it actually gets a little bit of Cuba there, but then it goes a bit further towards the north and intensifies rather rapidly, heading somewhere on the eastern portions of Louisiana. Now, as I said, this isn't set in stone, and the thing of it is that you saw how one model thinks that it'll make landfall somewhere over here in Texas. You have another model that thinks it'll make landfall somewhere over here near Louisiana, specifically eastern Louisiana. And so this is really something to watch out for as this continues to move on through, as to where these models think this will actually form and where will it go, as well as how strong it will be, of course. Now, I want to look a little bit past this because I do think there is another area to watch here right after the system, right in the beginning of September. And here it is as well. The GFS is also picking up on this as well. So as we get closer and closer towards basically the peak of hurricane season, which is sometime around September 10th and 11th, this activity is really going to start to amplify. And according to the GFS, we do have a attempt of a tropical system to form somewhere here near the Yucatan Peninsula, even towards Central America. In regards to whether or not how intense that could be, as well as where it could go, it's very hard to say for sure, and it's very hard to say where as well as when. But what we do know is that we do have a lot of moisture within that general area, and that it is monsoon season. I'm sorry, monsoon season somewhere here in, I guess it's just all across here in Central America. And that's creating a lot of vorticity, a lot of activity here for areas in the Caribbean. Now, if we go back to the beginning here with the GFS and go to this 500 millibar vorticity. Actually, we may want to go a little bit lower than that. Let's go 850 millibar vorticity for the beginning. And a couple things that I do want to point out here. First off, all the colors on your screen that indicates certain amounts of vorticity. Of course, the better defined a tropical system is, the more vorticity it's going to have. And so if you see any areas that indicate a lot of reds, even dark reds, even large reds in that general vicinity, that's going to indicate a lot of vorticity within a specific area. So as we watch this continues to develop, we also have to pay attention with the environment around it. And one things that some of the things that we can look at is the directions of which these wind barbs are actually moving. And if we look at how those wind barbs are moving, we actually have an elongated ridge that's somewhere over Bermuda, right about here. And that's creating a lot of steering shear here for the most part as to where these tropical systems could potentially go, as well as where this upper level low is going to move off to. So we have a lot of this wind shear that's pushing this upper level low to somewhere over here into the Gulf of Mexico. And if this low pressure system down here, Invest 99L, does form, this low pressure system will begin to follow this other low pressure system, the upper level low that's out in front of it, as it continues to move on through into the Gulf of Mexico. Now, the thing about it is, with most upper level lows in the tropics, is that they actually tend to die out rather quickly. So this thing will begin to disintegrate as it continues to move on through, leaving behind a less amount of wind shear, as well as some residual effects of dry air with it. So that will most likely give a prime environment for this tropical system to form as it continues to move on through into the weekend. So here it is. By Friday morning into Friday afternoon, there's your tropical system that begins to form somewhere near Cuba. And this high pressure system, this other high pressure system that was near the Bahamas, the Bahamas and Bermuda, anywhere near the Bermuda Triangle at this point, because it's pretty elongated, somewhere about right here. this is going to force the system somewhere over here into the Gulf of Mexico. And depending upon where this high pressure is, whether it's a little bit further towards the west, a little bit further south, maybe right around where it is, that also can contribute as to where this tropical system could go. So really something to watch out for as this continues to progress and as the models continue to get more and more fine-tuned data on this system. Now, the one thing about with this, as we continue to look on through, we're going to actually skip the National Hurricane Center probabilities until the end, right when we begin to answer questions from people. We're going to take a look at the spaghetti model guidance here from a lot of these models. And as of the 18Z run, which is the runs that are currently ongoing with the GFS and the HWRF model, which is the models that we're really going to want to watch out for, you can see that a lot of these spaghetti models take their tracks somewhere here in between Corpus Christi and even as far east as Pensacola. Now, personally, I think it'll go as far east as, say, maybe Lafayette, maybe even somewhere near the Mississippi River Delta. I think that's more or less a higher likelihood as to where this tropical system could end up being. But the thing of it is these models and this environment here with this system is ever changing, and it could always be a bit different than what the actual models say. So it's very hard to tell exactly where the system is going to be as soon as it makes landfall. But the general consensus here is that it most likely will be heading off just to the north and west into the northwestern portions of the Gulf of Mexico, meaning that areas here in the Florida Peninsula will most likely not be impacted. So that's something that we can rule out as of right now. But as I said, this is something that we're really going to have to watch out for as this continues to unfold, and we will have our answer on Friday morning, more than likely, as to where the system will go. Maybe even tomorrow night if we even keep up with it. Now, depending upon where this makes landfall, and when, depending upon where and when, I should say, I probably will be live streaming this, and we probably could have a storm chaser as well. Probably could. So maybe even 2 or 3. I have a lot of friends down there, and I've talked to one of them. He said that depending upon where this makes landfall, he probably could chase it. And so we'll be able to have him live on stream showing us the conditions of this system as it is currently, as it could unfold. But that's the big thing here as to where and when this could potentially make landfall. I'm looking at chat and asking as to when the potential landfall could potentially be. And the thing of it is that this is it's very different from run to run. So we have some models saying that landfall could be possibly on Monday morning. We have some models that could say it's on Tuesday morning. We have even some models that said it could potentially be even on Wednesday morning. That's how discombobulated this actual system and forecasting it is. And so here it is. Here's the Canadian model. They think that sometime Monday morning we could potentially have our landfall here. We also have, if we go over to the Euro model, we have sometime Monday morning into Monday afternoon could potentially be making landfall here. The German model, sometime on Monday evening into Tuesday, could potentially be making landfall. So it's just very weird, to say the least. But the big thing here is that landfall is anticipated, if this thing does end up forming into a tropical system, will be somewhere here in the either northwestern to central portions of the Gulf of Mexico. And it'll be sometime in the beginning of next week. So now we're going to take a look real quickly at the National Hurricane Center probabilities for these tropical systems as this continues to progress. I'm going to refresh my page here, see if they changed it, and they have not. So here we go. So we're going to go from Invest 97L to Invest 98L, and then, of course, 99L. Here is 97, 98, and then 99 right there. 97 has a 40% chance of formation over the next 48 hours, 80% chance of formation over the next 5 days. That is anticipated to stay over water for the most part, and it most likely will stay that way even as it continues to move on through towards the north and east. Then we also have Invest 98L, which has a 30% chance of formation over the next 5 days, so pretty low for the most part. And then, of course, 99L, which has an 80% chance of formation over the next 5 days, a 50% chance over the next 48 hours as well. That's the reason why I was saying it's starting to look a lot more organized as it continues to move on through. So we're definitely going to have to watch out for this as it continues to progress. What will be the strength for the system as it makes landfall? So the big thing here is that the models say it is pretty widespread, but I have a high confidence that this will at least be a Category 1 hurricane. And if this does end up rapidly intensifying, it could even end up being a Category 3 or a Category 4. But the big thing here is that it definitely will be over 74 miles per hour, in my opinion. Of course, for the best information, I highly recommend going to the National Hurricane Center and maybe even your local weather forecasting offices. But from my strict opinion, the opinion that reflects only myself and no one else, I would have to say that this will most likely be a hurricane and maybe even a major hurricane on its approach to the coast. So that's the reason why I'm trying to get the information out as much as possible. And of course, I'll be updating you guys more and more as this continues to get closer and closer. I tend to upload videos every single morning, although this morning I had to take my little brother to school, so I just couldn't upload a video. And I ended up deciding to basically make a live stream instead. But yeah, that's the big thing here, is that this will most likely be heading off to either the northwestern or the central portions of the Gulf of Mexico. I want to see if the HWRF model has changed at all with this, and it's now running, so we're going to continue to stay live here all the way up until 8. We're going to be reacting to this latest run of the HWRF model, which tends to be really good with track, and also takes into account rapid intensification. So if you guys are willing to stay with me for that duration, feel free to do so, but this is a very concerning situation that could potentially be developing, and we're trying to forecast this as best as possible. I do want to take a look at a couple other things here. First things first, let's take a look at the satellite surface winds from this system here with Invest 99L. And a couple things that we can see here for the most part. We have a lot of southerly winds coming off of South America here. A lot of southerly winds that is trying to head off into the storm. But then we have a lot of easterly winds that's pushing the storms off to the west, typical to what most tropical systems are doing. So we have a lot of this overlapping characteristic with this general wave, and that's the reason why it's not designated as an official tropical system yet. But this is definitely something to watch out for as this continues to progress. If it can start wrapping those winds around and becoming a bit more symmetrical, that's when we can start talking about this thing to becoming a official tropical system and maybe even a strong tropical system as it continues to move on through. So as of right now, doesn't look all too impressive based off of a surface wind perspective. If we take a look at the microwave imagery, it's not telling us a whole lot because they kind of missed it, so that is unfortunate. Yeah, they missed the center area of all of those showers and thunderstorms. So as I said, that is very unfortunate. It is pretty good, Brian. How about yourself? Any chance it may move towards Puerto Rico? I highly doubt it, in my honest opinion. It's too far south for it to do so. You can see it's actually too far south and west to do so. Right here is Puerto Rico, right here. And right here is the tropical wave that is in question, and it is heading off towards the north and west. So let's go through again as to what's the buildup with this system and how it's going to continue to move on through. First things first, let's take a look at the wide view of the Atlantic. And you can see across the board, there's a lot of showers and thunderstorms that'll move on through, as it typically has been continuing to do so. It's that time of year for hurricane season. It's going to continue to rather uptrend here as we get towards the peak of hurricane season. And it's right around the corner. The peak of hurricane season is around September 10th to September 11th. So there's going to be a lot of uptrending characteristics with this as this continues to move on through. Kasumi Wolf, hello, welcome to the live stream. So the big thing here is that we have three areas to watch. We have Invest 97L, which is in the middle of the Atlantic. We have Invest 98L, which is just off the Cabo Verde Islands. And then we have Invest 99L, which is the main threat here that's going to pose the most likelihood to hit land. The big thing here with 97 and 98L is that they are actually forecasted to move on through and actually stay out to sea. And the reason why that is the case is because if we actually, I'm going to try and open a new tab here, and I'm going to show you all the water vapor imagery just from this wide view. And we can see here for the most part from this wide view that there is a hint, and I mean a hint, of a ridge that is trying to develop somewhere around here. And the reason why I say that is because you have a lot of showers and thunderstorms that are moving this way, and you have a lot of showers and thunderstorms that are moving this way. And so this general clockwise motion here in the atmosphere does indicate that there is a bit of a ridge that's starting to naturally develop and guide these showers and thunderstorms a bit further towards open waters. And that's what typically ridges do. Ridges create a lot of wind shear, and they go around in a counterclockwise fashion around the center of it. And so that wind shear can basically guide these showers and thunderstorms out into specific areas that it pleases. Now, if you take a look over here towards the Caribbean as well as the Gulf of Mexico, I mean, that's a lot of activity there. Look at how many showers and thunderstorms that are forming across the board in places like the coastal Carolinas down to the deep south. That is a lot of activity here over there in the mainland parts of the United States. But the area that we really need to watch out for is this system right here. And it's already starting to really kind of congeal as this continues to progress over time, because it's having a lot of time over that warm and unstable waters that is basically fueling the system and intensifying it further and further. Now, unfortunately, this is really starting to head over towards the evening hours to overnight hours. So you can see the pass actually becomes a lot darker towards places like Puerto Rico. It might actually be towards sunset over there. But we can still have a general idea as to that there is a counterclockwise motion with this system as it continues to progress further and further. So there is already a general swirl with this. It's not exactly full tropical system scale swirl, but it may be trying to form here within the next, I'd say, 12 to 24 hours here. And we could potentially be talking about our next storm, which I believe, if I am not mistaken, is Ida. I believe that it will be some form of Ida. And how strong this potential system will be, I'm not calling it Ida quite yet, because, of course, it's not exactly, you know, designated and not everything is set in stone. But how strong this tropical system could be is the main question here, because it does have a couple characteristics that it will be trying to fight with. Going back to the water vapor imagery, it's up on a smaller scale here. You can see here is Invest 99L. Here is Jamaica, which is just to the north of it. Here's Jamaica right here. And you can also see here, after, if we just ignore all this showers and thunderstorms, because I know it can get a little bit distracting even for myself, we also have this upper level low pressure system that's now starting to move on towards the coast of the peninsula of Florida. And that's going to be creating a lot of wind shear here for the most part. As I said, low pressure systems really love to have this kind of counterclockwise swirl with it. And it creates a lot of wind shear around that as well. And so as this continues to move about, it's going to create a lot of strong wind shear as it continues to move further and further into the Gulf of Mexico, which is where this system is going to end up heading off towards. And you can already see that wind shear come into account here. We have some of these showers and thunderstorms on the southern side of Invest 99L that are not moving very fast. But then you have a lot of showers and thunderstorms on the northern side of it that are moving very rapidly in some instances. So we got a lot of wind shear here the closer and closer you get to the upper level low pressure system. And this could potentially influence as to how late, how long, and how strong this potentially system could be by the time it gets towards Friday morning. The other thing here as well is that we do have a little bit of dry air over here out in front of the system. Not too much dry air, but some dry air to the point where it could potentially limit showers and thunderstorms from developing. And if we go back to the True Color satellite here for the most part, you can see that here. There's a lot of these little lines for the most part. These little squiggly lines that look like tentacles or even spaghetti noodles in some spots. And that's indicating that there is a lot of dry air in this instance that's prohibiting thunderstorms from being able to develop. However, how that dry air encounters this tropical system as it continues to move on through is the big question here. There will be enough moisture here within this tropical system as well as Central America to offset that dry air and basically nullify it? Or will the dry air seep into the center area and prohibit showers and thunderstorms from actually forming, prohibiting this from actually developing further as well? That is the big question here as this continues to progress. Of course, as we take a look at the GFS model run here, the GFS actually forecasts that this system forms somewhere over here near Cuba by Friday evening into Saturday morning, and then this will eventually progress somewhere over towards Louisiana and Texas by Monday morning into Tuesday morning, sometime around that time frame, and impacts could be expected earlier than that. And just going ahead of time here, just to show you what the GFS says, you can see that it makes landfall sometime here, actually maybe even on Sunday evening into Monday morning. So I'll retract my recent statement in saying that if it goes a bit further east, then it could impact even earlier than anticipated. So this is something to really watch out for. And there's a lot of warm, unstable waters here as this continues to head off into the Gulf of Mexico. Of course, this is only just one opinion here from the GFS model, and if we even take a look at the GFS ensemble models, which basically shows you a bunch of different opinions from one different group, it's almost like you having a bit of a club, and you have your club members around you, and they're basically taking their own votes, giving their own opinions as to what a subject matter is. Well, we have a bunch of club members here that are telling the GFS model, telling the group here, what their different opinion is on where this tropical system could end up going, as well as how strong they could potentially be. So we have a couple model members, we have a couple members that are saying that a landfall here in Louisiana isn't out of the question. We have a couple members over here that says a landfall somewhere over here in Mexico is not out of the question. We have a couple model members that even say a strong landfall somewhere over here in eastern Texas to southeastern Texas, maybe somewhere near Corpus Christi and Houston, is not out of the question. It all depends upon where the system actually ends up forming and how strong it could be, as well as how long it is over the water. The big thing here is that look at the swath here from the models. Look at how far apart they actually are in regards to their track. We have one that's somewhere over here in towards central portions of the Caribbean, just south of Cuba. We also have some other model members that are over here near Honduras. So it's very widespread as of right now, and it's not exactly all too consolidated. But once we start to have the model members become a lot more consolidated and a lot of these lines are a lot closer to each other, that's when we can start talking about a more defined track as to where this could potentially go. Another thing here to point out too is that even if we take a look at another model run here, we'll take a look at the multi-spaghetti model guidance here. We're taking a look at a bunch of different other models that are basically talking to each other, and this is just it's basically a bunch of different other clubs that are talking with other clubs. So we talked about how the club members were talking to their clubs. This is the clubs talking to the clubs in this instance. And look at how widespread this guidance is. Look at how long this line extends. Very widespread and undistinguished as to where this will particularly go. It all depends upon where that center area of low pressure actually ends up forming. However, I will say with analogs, which is just basically past data, we've noticed a bit of a trend that on the northern side typically has a higher likelihood of forming the center area of low pressure. So maybe some landfall over here between, I'd say, Corpus Christi and all the way over to maybe even Mobile and Pensacola, Florida. That's where the potential ground zero could be, but that's how widespread the potential impacts could potentially be, just based off of us not knowing where this is going to go. The system, of course, is not expected to be a super massive storm by any stretch of the imagination. However, it's just there is too much uncertainty at this time as to where this thing would specifically make landfall. So at this point, it's just better to get the information out as to where this could potentially make landfall as it continues to move on through. Now, we are going to take a look at the HWRF model as we continue to react to this. And the HWRF model has caught on here to the center area of low pressure. The only thing is that it only goes out 126 hours, and it's loading some of those frames at the moment. So as I said, we're going to continue to try and get more and more information as this continues to move on through. But as of right now, it's on hour 30, and it still needs to get to hour 126. So a lot of time in between now and the end of the model run. Taking a look back over here, let's go back to the GFS model. We're going to go back to the beginning here. And actually, you know what? Let's go to the true color satellite loop again, just one more time before it actually... I'm being really indecisive here. Let's go to the water vapor imagery. First things first, just to point out characteristics, there's Jamaica, there is Cuba, and there is Hispaniola. The big thing to watch out for is this giant tropical wave that is somewhere over in here. The center area of low pressure, that could be somewhere within there. As this continues to propagate further northwestward, it'll be creating some flash flood risks across the board here. Specifically, I'd mention somewhere near Cuba and Hispaniola, as well as maybe possibly Jamaica. They could be getting some flash flood risks. Not significant by any stretch of the imagination, but you could still see some of which that could potentially be dangerous and life-threatening. And then you also have some activity over here in Central America as well because of the monsoon that is currently ongoing over there. So you have a lot of activity as this continues to move off towards the north and west, and this moisture will basically try to supply the system as this continues to move off towards the north and west. So for people who are asking questions as to where this is going to specifically go, it will head off somewhere in the Gulf of Mexico. All right, we know that it most likely will not impact areas of the Florida Peninsula. I say most likely because there is a slim chance, but a very, very small chance. I'd say maybe less than 5%. And there's a larger chance that it will impact somewhere in the northwestern to central portions of the Gulf of Mexico. So that includes areas from Corpus Christi all the way through to somewhere near Lake Charles, Houston, New Orleans, Gulfport, Mobile, somewhere around that general vicinity as to where you could potentially be seeing impacts from this system. And notice how I say potentially, because it's not exactly set in stone as to where this track actually is. And it's not a large tropical system by any stretch of the imagination, but it still could potentially be rather strong. I'm definitely thinking, just based off of my own opinion and no one else's, I definitely think that it'll become a hurricane, and it could potentially, I say potentially, become a major hurricane as it approaches the Gulf of Mexico. So let's take a look at the National Hurricane Center again. The one thing I do want to mention, actually a little bit earlier, a little bit more of a clarification, is that it actually intensifies into a hurricane as it is over the open waters of the Gulf of Mexico. So not exactly, that it becomes a hurricane while it's in the Caribbean. It's more or less it becomes a hurricane as it's in the Gulf of Mexico, if that makes any sense to any of you. thank you everyone who came out to the live stream. I really do appreciate it. Of course, we're going to continue to live stream all the way through. Actually, the new update for the disturbances here come out at 8 o'clock, so we'll be able to show you all the new probabilities of these disturbances as this continues to progress forward. But we're gonna basically live stream all the way up until 8 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, maybe even a little bit later. Continue to answer questions and try to get the information out as much as possible. Of course, if you would like to help me get the information out as much as possible, feel free to share this live stream with friends and family and on social media, because we're trying to get the word out as much as possible, as quickly as possible. That way people have more time to try and prepare. And it's better to be safe than sorry in this instance, especially since we are getting towards the peak of hurricane season. So really something to watch out for with that. And by liking the live stream, you actually help me get this live stream out to more people's recommended feeds, essentially getting the information out a lot more efficiently. So I really would appreciate it if you guys haven't already to please hit that like button, that little thumbs up button that's down below. Really would appreciate it. Is there a chance it will hit Houston? You live there, so kind of curious. Got into the storm recently after seeing a tornado from your porch last week. Yeah, this definitely could hit Houston. But it's a could at this point. It's not that it will, it's a could. There's a decent chance that it will end up doing so. Most of the models are starting to trend a little bit further eastward, so maybe not huge impacts now, but if it does end up heading straight into your general vicinity, it might be stronger than any of the instances a bit further towards the east. So we're just going to have to see. I'll probably have a better answer for you tomorrow here. Noob here, what happens if you click that one link in the description? If it says don't click here, it just basically says hit the subscribe button. It says, are you sure you want to subscribe to Nate Snyder? Is it organized enough to see where it's going yet? Well, not specifically. We have an idea as to where it will end up heading off to, and we can start crossing off areas as to where it most likely will not hit. But in regards to specifically as to where this will go, that's a little bit difficult for me to say, as well as the intensity, of course. Big thing here is that the Florida Peninsula most likely will be out of the risk. That's the big thing there. The other thing here is that most of the model guidance has taken this to where this tropical system will end up making landfall somewhere from the border of Mexico and the United States, so somewhere near South Padre Island, all the way up to potentially even Corpus Christi and Houston, all the way through to maybe Lake Charles, New Orleans, and all the way through as far east as Pensacola, Florida. So really something to watch out for in regards to where this specifically could make landfall, because depending upon where it will make landfall, that could determine as to how intense your storm surge could be, how strong the winds are, how much flooding will there be on a widespread scale, power outages, especially since some of these areas over here, if it hits near Lake Charles, they got decimated by multiple tropical systems last year, and some of which were major in the same instances as this system is in right now. It's looking very similar to the setup of what it was last year in regards to the progression, the position, and the environment around it. And so, as I said, I have a high confidence that this will be a hurricane once it gets into the Gulf of Mexico. How strong it will be after Category 1 status, very hard to say. How about Belize City? I live here. First off, I've been to Belize City. It's actually very nice over there. I actually like it. I liked it a lot. I'm Belizeing it, as most of the locals would tell me. Belize City, luckily you guys are anticipated to not get the brunt of this tropical system, but it is monsoon season over there, so I would not be surprised if flooding conditions could be possible over there, especially with some localized areas of showers and thunderstorms. But for most of these models, it seems as if you probably could be spared by most of the activity here. of this tropical system. So that's the good news for the most part. But if there ever is a tropical system that ends up heading off into your general vicinity, as I said, I will be making videos on that. I could potentially even be making live tropical updates in the evenings for you all as well. Just basically giving you all the latest information as well as the most up-to-date information that I possibly can. Be a major regardless of where it hits. I definitely think it has the possibility of doing so. There's just, it's so, the waters in the Gulf of Mexico are so unstable that a part of me just wants to say it's going to go right now, but I need to know where the center area of low pressure actually forms. If it splits, I will say, if it splits this area right here, if it splits the area of Cuba and the Yucatan Peninsula, it has a high likelihood of rapidly intensifying. The only thing that is going to be impacting this system in regards to and the environment would have to be the wind shear. And the only reason why I say that is because there's another tropical system that's over in the Pacific right now. It's creating a lot of anticyclonic flow. Somewhere, if I can find it, right about here. So you can see some of the wind shear that's pushing off in this general vicinity right here. However, there's not a whole lot of wind shear right there, according to the GFS. So if this thing can punch through that, then yeah, we could be talking about this system rapidly intensifying, as I mentioned. And yeah, we could potentially be talking about a major hurricane, probably the first major hurricane to hit the United States. So, yeah, it's really something to watch, and it's very interesting to see how this will progress. But as of right now, this is a very concerning situation. But yeah, this is a this is really concerning if that's the case. As I said, all right, as I said earlier on in the live stream, if this thing stays within the US and doesn't go too far east, if it like doesn't go all the way over to say the panhandle of Florida, I could potentially be having some storm chasers to be in the system, but it honestly depends upon where it makes landfall. All right, if it does make landfall around where the storm chasers live and or somewhere near it, then yeah, we could potentially be talking about our live stream as well as our storm chasers that will be watching this system very closely and even be hit right in the center. They'll be hit right where the system is as this continues to progress. So we'll watch it through. I'll go over day 4 in a bit. I'll have to see as this. I'll have to take a look at it a bit further. Good morning from the UK, Nate and everyone. Good morning, good morning. It's good evening over here, really, but good morning. Is this a threat to a New Orleans threat? It could potentially be. I definitely think that this thing could move on through into your general area. Whether or not it will be very strong impacts or minimal impacts is very small, but very small margin, I should say, because it's very difficult to say for certain. But I don't know where this thing is. It's definitely consolidating, though, so it's going to be stronger more than likely. Yeah, the HWRF model is really starting to become a bit more concerning to me. What will be the name of it? I believe it will be Ida. The next system name is Ida, if this does form. But I do think it will 100% be a hurricane once it gets into this into the Gulf of Mexico. And if this doesn't form early enough, this might not be Ida. It might actually be the next one after that, because there's another system that might form somewhere in the central Atlantic. So after Ida, it'll be the J name, I believe. Either that or K. So let's take a look real quickly at the 2021 hurricane names. And the next one after Ida is Julian. So Julian and then Kate. So we could be watching for either Ida or Julian. Either one. Whichever one it's named. To potentially be heading on through towards the north. And the reason why I say this one could be Julian is because there's also another area to watch. Somewhere in the central Atlantic, it actually has a 40% chance of formation over the next 48 hours and an 80% chance of formation over the next 5 days as well. So depending upon which one forms first, it could either be Ida or it can either be Julian. But this is a very... Regardless, this tropical system will be something that we will have to watch for, I'd say, within the next 6 days. 5, 6, 7 days. Within the time period of a week, this will most likely be making landfall. All right, by this time next week, we will not be talking about Julian or Ida, or whichever one this one is named. All right, this one might continue to stay alive by that time period, but we will not be talking about this tropical system making landfall, more or less, unless if there's this high pressure system, which is over here, that ends up moving over that general vicinity and stalls it out. All right, that's the big thing there. But by sometime early next week, either Sunday, Monday, or Tuesday, it will be making landfall somewhere here on the northwestern to central portions of the Gulf of Mexico. That's the big thing right there. Tropical Tidbits said the 29th to 30th. Yeah, that's Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. Tuesday's the 31st, I believe. Yep, Tuesday's the 31st. So Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, sometime that time frame is when this thing will be making landfall, more than likely. So that's the big concern there, as I mentioned. Let me put that up there real quickly. And let's see, I'm refreshing my page here. I want to see something. Let's go to IEMBot. IEMBot, see when the latest information is going to be from the National Hurricane Center. Tropical Depression 14, where is that? That is, I believe, in the Pacific. I think that is in the Pacific. And it is in the Pacific. There you go. What is up with the one in yellow? So that is actually Invest 98L. But the ones in yellow typically have the lowest chance of formation. The color code goes as follows. Yellow is less than 40% chance of formation. Orange is 40 to 60% chance, and then red is 60% chance, or actually, no, I'm sorry, 60%, not 60% chance or greater than 60% chance. So this one has a 30% chance of formation over the next 5 days. So not very likely for that system to end up forming. The thing of it is I actually don't have a Patreon. Best way to fund my channel is through channel memberships. So, if you're in Cancun, do you think you should get out of town? Personally, I think you guys should be fine. I don't think it will be intensifying that significantly once it moves over your area. Or at least I don't think it'll be that significant by the time it gets over there. It still has to go through a couple of factors. Unless if it can shed them relatively quickly, which is always a possibility. It's always a possibility. I think Cancun should be all right. Maybe even, I mean, you could potentially see maybe a Category 1 hurricane by the time it gets over there. But we're flirting with temptation at that point. Could it possibly be that the one hitting the Yucatan could be a major Cat 5 possibly? It would have to depend upon how... it would honestly depend upon how far it moves in the Gulf of Mexico and how much time it has over the Gulf of Mexico. So if it's over here in Cuba and it goes towards Houston, it's going to cover a lot of area here in the Gulf of Mexico, of course. But if it's like in the Yucatan Peninsula right here, and then it just goes straight north towards the Mississippi River Delta, well, it's not going to have a whole lot of time over water. I mean, it'll still have some relatively warm waters, of course, but, you know, it won't have a lot of time. So it probably won't get up to that major high end. I mean, it could potentially still be a major, but like not significant major that high up. It would just have to depend upon how long it's over water and how far it's traveling over water for it to determine as to whether or not it could be a, you know, Cat 3, Cat 4, Cat 5, Category 2, Category 1. But I definitely think it could be a, I definitely think it could be a hurricane by the time, once it actually gets in over here, once it gets into the Gulf of Mexico, it will become a hurricane. Check Georgia right now. What's happening in Georgia? Yeah, there's a couple showers and thunderstorms over here. A couple of which have 60-mile-per-hour wind gusts, as well as 40 to 50-mile-per-hour wind gusts. I don't see any tags that mention possible tornadoes. A lot of scattered showers and thunderstorms at the moment that I'm seeing here. A lot of scattered showers and thunderstorms, actually. Do I think the high-pressure system moving into the northeast Gulf of Mexico will affect its strength of the storm, maybe even weaken it? So the thing of it is with that is the high-pressure system is anticipated to not even move into the Gulf of Mexico. So, let's see if I can pull it up here real quickly with the GFS. You're a noob. How do you become a channel member? Right next to the subscribe button is where there's a button that says join if you've subscribed to the channel, of course. Keyword if. Which, if you haven't, you know, I'm not going to push my narrative saying you should subscribe, but I do upload as much content as I possibly can to try and inform as many people as possible. So if you're into weather information, up-to-date weather information with severe weather like tornado outbreaks, potential hurricanes like the one we're most likely going to see on either Sunday, Monday, or Tuesday making landfall, or, you know, even winter weather like major ice storms, major Arctic outbreaks, blizzards, stuff like that, feel free to stick around with the channel and stay up to date with my videos, because, you know, I try to inform as many people as possible, try to get the information out earlier than most other people, because I try to, you know, look at as many possibilities as I possibly can, and I try to get, you know, try to use the knowledge that I've gained to try and help people in that instance. So here we go. This is what I'm going to be talking about here, and as of right now, it looks like a bunch of squigglies and colors and stuff like that, but I assure you, it actually is relevant data. So, if you find any sort of colors anywhere, it tells you that there is an enhanced vorticity within that area, and of course, the more consolidated it is with the reds and the oranges, specifically reds, that tells you that there's a higher amount of vorticity, even the highest amount of vorticity, indicating a tropical system. So in this instance right here, you can see that it does consolidate a lot more significantly once it gets into the Gulf of Mexico, right here. All right, this is from one model, so this is just one opinion. It could be right there, it could be somewhere over here, it could be over here, it could be over here. As of right now, you know, we'll have a better answer as to where that could be by most likely tomorrow. But we also have what someone mentioned earlier, which was the high pressure system that's going to be kind of lingering within this general vicinity. And you can see that with the wind barbs here. The one thing with wind barbs is that if you ever see a little stick with the little flags on the side and stuff like that, or whatever, the good way to read them is that whichever way the stick is, the shorter end, so basically this side right here, is on, that's the direction in which the wind is moving. So it's basically moving this way, if this was the wind barb. If it was like this, then the wind is moving from the south to the north. So it kind of makes sense, right? Same thing as well. Well, not exactly the same thing, but the other thing here is these little sticks on the end of the wind barb. So you have the long stick, you have the short stick, and then you have the triangle. All right. The long stick represents 10 knots, the short stick represents 5 knots, and then the triangle represents 50 knots. All right. So we have some wind shear here, as you can see, that is moving from east to west. And it's moving in a clockwise formation, because you do have that high pressure, that ridge sitting right over here over the Carolinas. And what that is basically going to do is that wind shear that is attributed with this system, it's basically going to push the tropical system in the general direction of wherever it goes. And so that's the big thing there. It will most likely push it somewhere in the northwestern portions to the central portions of the Gulf of Mexico, right about there, right about somewhere over there, due to the fact that the wind shear in this instance is coming from the south and east and moving to the north and west, specifically because of this ridge right here. So the question was, if this high pressure system goes a bit further south, will it weaken the system? And my answer is probably not. And the reason why I say that is because the wind shear here, no matter what, it will be the same. It'll be the same strength, and it'll be moving the same in the same direction. Although that might influence its track a bit more. It might move it a bit further west if it's a little bit further south. It will still be about the same. And so it most likely will not hamper the storm by a large margin. It most likely will still be rather significant as it gets into the Gulf of Mexico. So good question, but in this instance, probably not. It doesn't say member, it says join. Yep, that's where you do it. That's you hit the join button, and then it's $5 a month. That's how you become a member. All right, let's take a look at the HWRF model now. Let's react to it. So they've got a couple more hours here. So now that's 60 hours out, a little under 3 days here. But let's see, it intensifies and continues to intensify, and it intensifies, my goodness, yeah, so by Friday evening into Saturday morning, they have this as a potential strong tropical storm. Let's actually go to the 10-meter winds, which is about it's relatively close to the surface. We'll go with that for right now. And they're saying that the maximum sustained winds from this isn't wind gusts, this is sustained winds. Maximum sustained winds of 60 knots with the system. So according to the HWRF model, this thing could potentially be rapidly intensifying as it continues to move on through the Caribbean, and it hasn't even got into the Gulf of Mexico yet. So the thing of it is with the HWRF model is that this is kind of more or less the worst case scenario type model. It tells you probably what's most likely going to be the worst case scenario as it gets closer and closer to land. Other than, of course, the NAM 3 kilometer. The NAM 3 kilometer is not supposed to be used for tropical weather. It's supposed to be used for severe weather, but people use it for tropical weather all the time, and it basically forecasts like Armageddon and stuff like that. And of course, that's not exactly the best thing in the world to do. Wrong storm. Is it the wrong storm? That's 98. Yeah, it is 98. So there you go. Oh, that's fun. Sheesh. That is a big L. Well, there's your storm. And it's supposed to be a hurricane on its approach to Cuba. Well, there you go. Sheesh, that's significant, though. Oh, my goodness. A 74-knot storm. That's an 85-mile-per-hour storm, and it hasn't even... It just barely passed Cuba. That is... Well, ignoring my idiocy and how not to use a website, this is, wow. And I want to take a sounding here to see if I can find any wind shear that could beat up the storm. We do have some wind shear here at 200 millibars. We do have some wind shear coming from the south. We also have some wind shear here at 300, 400 millibars that are coming from the east. So we do have a little bit of displacement here with some shear. But that's significant. That is significant. If this does come into fruition, of course. That is a, wow. Too many storms, too little time. That's true. Once the system enters land, are there any tornado threats? There most likely could be. They have to be on the northeastern side of the actual system, because that's where the major tornado threat actually lies. Unless if you're in the eye of the hurricane, then there literally could be mini tornadoes that surround the actual eye wall, which it happens all the time, actually. If you take a look at strong hurricanes that are usually category 3s and above, they typically have hurricanes that are, that surround the eye. So, something interesting there. And we'll talk about that a little bit more as we look into radar data, especially when if this thing makes landfall. If this does make landfall, which it most likely will be as a hurricane, then, as I said, we will have live coverage of it. We will also, depending upon where it makes landfall, we could potentially have a storm chaser, but I'm saying potential because I don't exactly know where it's going to make landfall, and it might be too east of him. Unless if he's willing to drive that far out, then by all means. If he wants to do so, then that would be great. That would be me getting the information out as much as possible to as many people as possible. And we're going to be trying to, inform as many people as possible by showing people what these things can do. So, yeah. Will the storms hit New Orleans and Mississippi? It definitely could, but as of right now, we don't exactly have the best idea as to where specifically it will go. But as of right now, the general consensus is that it will hit somewhere from the border of Mexico and Texas all the way over towards Pensacola, Florida. Somewhere within that general vicinity will be the landfall. It just honestly depends upon where the center area of low pressure actually forms. If it forms as far north as it says it will, then it will most likely hit somewhere in Louisiana. Depending upon where in Louisiana, it is a little too hard to tell. But one more question from you. From what we saw with Grace, is it possible to see a replication of what happened after the Yucatan Peninsula? Or do you think it will shift towards Texas? Well, I mean, in this instance, it's going to be heading off from south to north, so it's not going to be heading this way here. All right, the wind shear is not carrying it like this. What's going to be happening is the wind shear is going to be carrying the tropical system, and we'll play back over here to the precipitation. We'll see it go from southeast right here, and we'll play it up further as it congeals, to northwest. And then if we continue to play it further, you can see how the line is relatively straight. The line is actually pretty straight. So it advances in the general vicinity of to the north and west, somewhere in this line. It could potentially even head off this way as well, too, depending upon where this high pressure system's placement actually is. But as of right now, somewhere here from Pensacola all the way over towards the Gulf of Mexico, the northwestern portions of the Gulf of Mexico along the Texas coast, is where it most likely will be making landfall. But yeah, I definitely think it can rapidly intensify after it moves through that area, that landmass of Cuba and the Yucatan Peninsula, if it stays as a strong tropical storm on its approach. And I definitely think by the time it gets towards the coastline, it'll become a hurricane. I have no doubt in my mind, and I'm very close to actually calling this as a I'm very close to actually calling that as a potential potential major hurricane that could make impacts. Are there any tropical waves behind Invest 99L? Yes, there are, but the only thing about that is they're forecasted to actually move a bit further over open waters. So that's the good news in that instance for the ones that are over near Africa. However, after there are a couple areas of moisture here along Central America that could be really consolidated. And afterwards, I'm going to show you all the sea surface temperatures, not just because someone actually asked in chat, but just to show you how unstable the environment is over there with this tropical weather. I'll show you here. This is about the end of August into early September. Look at how much showers and thunderstorms actually form over here near Panama. That is a lot of moisture here that really starts to try and consolidate a bit more. And it actually seems as if we might even potentially get a short-lived tropical system that could move on further. And according to this, it actually stalls. What is this run of the GFS? That's not legit. That's not how that works. That's not how weather works. That's not how that works. That's not how that works. I refuse to believe that that actually is how that works. That's very bad if that happens, but I have a high confidence that that will not work out like that, because the models, once you get that far out, is very inconsistent. But basically what it did, if you could not tell, is that it basically formed a tropical system. It sat over here in Cozumel, and then it moved on through as a major hurricane after it passed that. That's not how weather works. That's not how that works. Anyways, the point being is beginning of August into September, this is the wave that we need to watch out for after this. But the confidence in this being here by the time, either Julian or Ida, whichever this is designated as a name, most likely will be Ida, because this will probably have the higher likelihood of this forming over the one that's in the central Atlantic. The likelihood of this still being here, it's still possible, probably a 50-50 chance, but we also have to consider that other 50% chance as well. As I said, I will be updating you guys more and more as this continues to get closer and closer. We are expecting landfall to be sometime Sunday night into Monday, maybe even into Tuesday morning. So that time frame of the 36 hours, right around there, that is expected to be when landfall will be of this tropical system. So I will be continuing to upload videos. I will be most likely doing live analysis of these systems as it continues to move about in the evenings. We had a pretty good turnout here for this evening, and we're going to continue to watch this as this continues to progress further, and we'll actually react to the HWRF model as well. But we will most likely be doing live tropical updates every evening. We will also be, as I said, uploading videos. And then once the system does make landfall, or right before landfall, we will be starting a live stream. We will be covering it live to where there could be tornado warnings and stuff like that. Depending upon where it makes landfall, we may also have a storm chaser here as well. And we'll be giving you hurricane hunter data, satellite data, live radar analysis, 3D data. I'm actually curious if I can get that 3D data in here for you. I just have to see if they actually have it here. I doubt that they do. But if they do, then that's phenomenal. But oh, so it's out for this development over here. They have a mesoscale for that system. Oh, they do have a mesoscale for this invest. Okay, never mind. We can get the 3D data right now. We can get the 3D data right now. So here you go. Here's the 3D data of the satellite. This is just a preview for you all. And if we take a look at this, very scattered activity for the most part. A lot of scattered showers and thunderstorms here. That's just south of Jamaica. That's just really the activity here, to say the least. But we have a lot of strong showers and thunderstorms indicated in the dark reds, even blacks and whites. Very strong activity there. But another thing, too, is that if this thing does consolidate into a hurricane, we already saw this before in previous live streams with Hurricane Grace. Some of you may not have remembered or even heard of Hurricane Grace, but Hurricane Grace occurred just a little bit before Henri, and it was a hurricane just right after it passed through the Yucatan Peninsula. It basically was a hurricane. Once it hit the Yucatan, it weakened into a tropical storm, and then it intensified. It actually rapidly intensified significantly into a strong 125 mile per hour major hurricane as a Category 3 with storm surge and very high amounts. And we actually saw, prior to its landfall, we actually saw that it formed an eye. And so with this 3D satellite analysis here that we have for you, you guys will be able to not only see the 3D of the radar from GR2 Analyst as well as Radar Omega here, but you'll also be seeing the satellite 3D of the eye as it approaches the coastline of the U.S., which it will most likely be heading towards the U.S. in this instance. There's a small chance that it'll hit Mexico and go that route, but it's more than likely that it'll be heading off to the United States. Cool. Hello. Welcome to the live stream. How are you? So for Texas, yep. By the way, nice Baltimore Ravens emblem. I like it. I like it a lot. Will we get up to the name Nicholas this year, do I think? Probably will. Probably will. It's very active across the board here. Let's count how many names are actually down. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Yep. So my prediction was actually, I believe it was 17 to 19 name storms this year. My original prediction was 18 to 20 name storms, but Nicholas is storm number 14, so 15, 16, 17. My lowest is Rose, which that doesn't sound like a tropical system name to you, does it? It's kind of anticlimactic. And then you have Sam and Teresa and Victor. So Victor... Teresa or Victor, I can see as the ceiling of the tropical systems this year, although we could have more. If the Atlantic continues to trend the way it does, we could potentially have more. So something to really watch out for as well. All right, let's take a look further. Let's take a look 3 days out now. This is Saturday evening into Sunday, and the intensification process here for the HWRF model still seems to be in that phase to where it will continue to intensify significantly. I mean, that's just, as unfortunate as it is, a lot of these greens around it, this indicates about tropical depression to tropical storm force winds. Actually, it is tropical storm force winds, so my bad. And then these purples into even pinks, this is hurricane force winds here at the surface. And if we take a look up here at this blue number, right about there, it says it has a maximum sustained wind of 88 knots. 88 knots, which would be around a 95 mile per hour storm, which I believe that's a Category 1. And if it's any stronger, then it's a Category 2 hurricane. It might even intensify stronger than that, according to this model. So that's very, very concerning as this continues to move on through. Should you worry for Houma, Louisiana? Also, hi, I was brought here by Hurricane Track. Well, thank you for coming out to my channel. I really do appreciate it. And the thing of it is with this is that the direct impacts as to where this system could go is very hard to tell right now. However, it's probably going to be a lot easier to determine as to where this will specifically make impacts by most likely tomorrow evening. Once once we get there to tomorrow evening, then we'll be able to tell specifically as to where this thing is going to head off to. However, we do have a swath, or at least I personally have a swath. This is my own personal opinion as to where this thing could potentially make landfall. And it may seem like a very large swath to most of you, but to some other people who may live in Florida, they're going to probably be like, oh, thank God we're not in a tropical system. So I personally think from the border of the U.S.-Mexico border, all the way up towards Houston, Lake Charles, New Orleans, all the way over to Pensacola, I think this general area is the swath as to where this tropical system could potentially make landfall. That is my personal opinion as to where I think this could potentially go to. Now, of course, because you live in Louisiana, this most likely will head off into your general vicinity if it does so. As a matter of fact, most of the models do indicate that that will most likely be the case. It's more or less a higher likelihood as it continues to become more and more into view. So we're really going to have to watch out for this progression and how this forms, because as of right now, this isn't an official system. The National Hurricane Center, if we go over to their 5-day tropical weather outlook, this disturbance here, Invest 99L, has an 80% chance of formation over the next 5 days, a 50% chance of formation over the next 48 hours or 2 days. So it's not exactly, you know, set in stone as to this being a tropical system right here, right now. However, just by looking at satellite imagery, it is starting to become more and more organized, and you can even start to see a little bit more of a counterclockwise spin to it. That's the classic look that we try and find for tropical systems. It hasn't exactly wrapped around fully its southwesterly winds yet, but it's definitely trying to, and we most likely will have a designated storm here, most likely within the next day. Maybe even less than that. Maybe the next 18 hours. So that's the big thing here, is that depending upon where this thing forms and where it heads off to, which if it forms right here, right now, then we're most likely talking about Louisiana being the landfall position. Because that's where it looks like it's going to be, that's definitely where it looks like it's going to be forming, just based off of this satellite presentation. Should we worry in Texas? You live in Texas. The track has moved further east since yesterday. The good news for people in Texas is that yes, it has moved further east, and most likely will be the case that people near Texas probably won't be impacted by the landfall specifically as much as we thought before. But the thing of it is now is that it definitely is looking more and more likely that people in Louisiana who have been hit so many times last year, we can go through all sorts of different name storms that they had. They had, what, 2 Category 4 hurricanes, I believe it was. They got hit by Laura, and Laura decimated a lot near Lake Charles. So this area, again, here in Louisiana, which has historically been almost a magnet to hurricanes, or even tropical systems for that matter, is most likely going to be impacted again. Most likely. I was actually going into this live stream earlier on. I was thinking into my head, I was like, okay, well, where can I basically break down as to specific areas as to where they're most likely going to get hit by these conditions? All right, not exactly hurricane force winds. Just say tropical storm force winds or something like that. Tropical conditions of that matter. And I thought to myself, all right, well, I'll say somewhere near Intracoastal City in Pensacola, they could potentially be getting some of that activity. Potentially. Maybe even New Orleans. So somewhere Intracoastal City and New Orleans, that general area is where I originally thought going into the live stream, that's what my idea was. And then I saw a couple of the opinions from the models and how it continued to progress further and further eastward. And that's when I started to say to myself, okay, well, maybe I need to increase the span of this as to where this could potentially make impacts and maybe cut some things out. So that's the reason why I said, all right, Mexico, all right, this area here in the Bay of Campeche, probably not going to be impacted as much. All right, this thing has had a lot more of a trend to the east in regards to where it could potentially make landfall, so we can start crossing that out. But we still have the potential for stuff over here in places like coastal Texas. They could potentially get landfall as well. But most of the models, as I said, have had a more of a influence towards the east rather than to the west. So let's take a look here at the latest HWRF model. And that's pretty concerning right here. All right, so now we see officially where the system, from this opinion of the HWRF model, which is basically a worst case scenario indicator as to where this could potentially head off. And I think you guys can already tell as to where this is going to be at. Look at this. This right here is Louisiana. There is, yeah, there's New Orleans. There's Lake Charles, Intracoastal City, Lafayette, right around there. Here's your tropical system. And the maximum sustained winds, according to this model run, is, oh God. I hope this does not come into fruition. The maximum sustained winds, according to the system, is 108 knots. And if I translate knots to miles per hour here for you all, that actually comes out to 125 miles per hour, which would be a Category 3 major hurricane, if this plays out as the worst case scenario from the HWRF model. And there's some instances where the HWRF model is right. The worst case scenario plays out, and we have to prepare for it. That's what happened all the time last year. All the time last year, the entire time, Louisiana got hit by the worst case scenario because there wasn't as many limiting factors out in front of the system. And it's kind of similar right now as to what's happening. If we go over to the water vapor imagery of what's out in front of Invest 99L, we can see a couple things. We can see, first off, of course, the counterclockwise swirl of the tropical wave right within here. But then you also have another counterclockwise swirl up here. And this is another low pressure system that's not tropical. It's an upper level low. So it's in the upper parts of the atmosphere, creating bits and bobs of wind shear. And so what's basically going to happen here is, with this low pressure system, it's creating a lot of wind shear. It's creating this wind channel, this wind tunnel, that's pushing a lot of these showers and thunderstorms in this general path. So you have showers and thunderstorms moving south here, a lot of northerly shear. Then you have these showers and thunderstorms that all of a sudden over here are moving to the east. So you have this westerly wind shear. And then you also have these showers and thunderstorms on the northern side of Invest 99L that are moving north. So a lot of southerly wind shear. And this is basically going to be the main contributing factor as to where the system will go. This wind shear most likely will influence this tropical system's track. And what I mean by that is, typically wind shear loves to guide these tropical systems to wherever. So as of right now, it'll be really interesting to see how this progresses. But the thing of it is, with this upper level low, is that historically, if they are over tropical waters, which this will be moving off further towards the west, they'll continue to deteriorate, and the wind shear will continue to deteriorate. And especially with wind shear beginning to weaken further and further, tropical systems break through that wind shear. And that's the big thing here, is that it is forecasted and or anticipated to break through and basically, push it off a bit more. So, of course, as I said, that wind shear is going to basically guide it a bit further and further eastward. But in regards to the environmental factors, there's a little bit of dry air out in front of it, but there's so much moisture that it's very hard for us to say that this thing will basically straight up impact this as it is, and limit showers and thunderstorms in the future. And then, of course, as I said, wind shear is expected to weaken further and further. So there's not really a lot that's prohibiting this from intensifying further and further. And as I said in the beginning of my live stream, I have a high confidence that this will be a hurricane once it gets into the Gulf of Mexico. Prior to then, probably not. But once it gets into this general vicinity right here, outlined in black, this general area right here, most likely will be a hurricane. Now, as I said, areas here in the Florida Peninsula probably will not be impacted. It will be somewhere most likely, if I had to pinpoint an area right now, I think my guess earlier on was pretty good. Somewhere in between Intracoastal City and New Orleans. I'd say Intracoastal City, Lafayette is a good mean, or actually I'll say median, as to where this could potentially make landfall. But as of right now, it's very hard to say specifically as to whether or not it could make landfall over here in Texas, whether or not it could make landfall in Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, even the furthest western portion of the panhandle of Florida. But as of right now, I'd have to say it's pretty good shot of hitting somewhere in Louisiana. But that's just based off of probabilities at this point. Did I cover Superstorm Hagibis? Unfortunately, I did not. However, if there are significant typhoons in the future, I might be able to do so. I might be able to. But as of right now, well, as of in the past, I should say, probably not as much. Let's see. Just saw how fast Grace rapidly intensified. Who says this won't right away? Doesn't have much land till the Gulf Coast. The only thing about it is that it's encountering that wind shear. So most of the showers and thunderstorms are being displaced, as well as the dry air that I mentioned that is right out front of it. So it might limit it a smidge, but then it'll probably start to intensify as it approaches Cuba. So that's the big thing there. Let's see. You think Houston is safe? I mean, Houston has the potential for it to get some activity, but as of right now, I wouldn't say that's the highest likelihood of where it's going to make landfall. I definitely think somewhere near Louisiana, the more and more that I look at these models, is probably the likelihood. And within the next frame here, the HWRF model, as I said, basically the worst case scenario indicator, max wind of this system with a 937 millibar low pressure, maximum in upwards of 116 knots, which, for those of you who don't know what 116 knots is compared to miles per hour, that's a 133 mile per hour sustained storm. That's pretty significant. That's very significant. And I believe that also is category 3, 4? I don't exactly know my Saffir-Simpson scale, like off the top of my head. Yeah, that is a category 4. Category 4 on its approach. As I said, worst case scenario indicator. So, of course you're going to want to monitor it for that worst case scenario, but you're going to also, want to take the general mean of it and, possibly assume it's a little bit less. But as of right now, especially with what happened last year and how it basically got hit with the worst case scenario every single time, you can't rule anything out. You cannot rule anything out. So, can you use a KMH mate translation? Yeah, I sure can. KMH to knots to KMH. Let's do. So kilometers per hour. And we'll do 115. That is 218 kilometers per hour. 218 kilometers per hour. Raiden, thank you so much for becoming a member on the channel. I really do appreciate it. As I said, thank you so much. It's basically a sponsorship to my channel. You get exclusive perks and stuff like that. You also get shouted out in my live streams at the bottom screen whenever it just basically cycles through. Yeah, 118 knots as it gets onto landfall. And they think, according to the HWRF model, another thing here, if we disregard the intensity, just real quickly, all right, if we disregard its intensity. Because as I said, this is the worst case scenario indicator. The landfall time period of which this could potentially make landfall, as I mentioned, is sometime Sunday night into Monday morning. As a matter of fact, 0Z Monday is 8 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, 7 p.m. Central Daylight Time, when this potentially makes landfall, according to this model. So that's a big thing right there that we have to watch out for. That's a big thing as to when this could potentially be making landfall. If it does make landfall earlier than anticipated, it may not have enough time for it to intensify rather significantly. But if it's over water a lot more, a lot longer, it'll have a lot more time for it to be over that unstable air mass, that unstable warm waters of the Gulf of Mexico, to allow it to gather as much energy as it needs to and potentially intensify significantly. So that's the one thing there that we're going to want to watch out for. And as I mentioned, it's basically the worst case scenario. So we're not going to want to, say that that's the thing that it's going to be set in stone. But the likelihood that this thing will become a tropical system is very high. As a matter of fact, the National Hurricane Center is got a high ceiling on this. And if we actually refresh the page here, 50% chance of formation over the next 48 hours and an 80% chance of formation over the next 5 days. So very high chance for it to form. And in my honest opinion, it's also got a very high chance of becoming a hurricane once it gets into the Gulf of Mexico. So that's the big thing there, is how strong will it be on its approach to the coast, as well as when will it make landfall and how long is it over water. Gloria with the $20 super chat. Thank you, my friend. I really do appreciate that. Thank you so much. Thank you for funding my channel. I really do appreciate it. Oh my goodness. Thank you so much. I really do appreciate that. And then Mikey Hawk with the $5 super chat says there's a tornado warning in Canada. Look on Radar Omega. Let us see. Yes, there is a tornado warning. Look at that. It's over in central Ontario too. I'm not sure if it's near any radar. And it is near a radar, so you might actually be able to see possibly what it's doing. It's got a lot of lightning with it. And the rotation isn't exactly the best, so probably not the best thing in the world. But it is capable of producing a tornado. So if you live over here, near Temiskaming Shores, highly recommend taking some form of shelter. Highly recommend. Are these any of these models taking it to Texas right now? You're in Austin. There are a couple models that are taking it to Texas, but it's a higher likelihood that it will be a bit further to the east. A lot more models take it that way as well. Earthquakes are a fact of life here in Japan. I kind of actually want to go over to Japan one day and just visit over there. I kind of want to. I think it would be a nice place for me to go off to and basically explore. Anyways, so yeah, that's the big thing here. We got to continue to watch this as this continues to unfold. Of course, I will be continuing to upload more and more videos on this tropical system as it becomes a little bit more into view, as well as my predictions for the track and the intensity of the system as it continues to go on further to the north. As you know, most of you all probably did not know this was going to happen here. If you had to guess. I mean, I know there's some people that may have went to other YouTube channels and they were talking about this, but it's more than likely that it is going to become a reality that this system could come into fruition. In regards to the intensity, it's very hard to say for certain, but I will be continuing to upload videos. I will be continuing to do live streams in the evening, giving you all live analysis of this system, answering questions and all sorts of stuff like that. So if you want to stick around with the channel, subscribe, turn on notifications, feel free. It's completely free to do so. It's completely free to do so. And I appreciate those who do. We've got a lot of subscribers here today, and we're actually pretty close to 13,400 subscribers. So we're getting close to our end sub goal for the end of the month. That would be pretty cool. Let's go take a look at the wide view of the Euro model here, because I haven't really invested in the Euro model all too much. Although, fun fact, in my honest opinion, I don't really think the Euro model is all too good with tropical systems. Although when it does say that there's a tropical system, there most likely will be a tropical system. So that's the one thing that I've learned. But if we take a look here, and we take a look at how the Euro model progresses, by the way, for those of you who don't know, the areas with yellows, oranges, and red colors, that's just areas of enhanced vorticity. So basically, just envision them as low-pressure systems, maybe even tropical systems in some instances. So if you ever see that, that's an indication that there's a tropical system there. So with the Euro model, you can see there's a lot of areas with red. I mean, there's the area to watch, Invest 99L. There is Invest 97L right over there. And then you also have another area right here, which might be Invest 98L. Could potentially be Invest 98L. And this is basically continuing to show that there is a lot of activity that's going to continue to unfold. And you even have a tropical wave that moves off of Africa that could potentially be a, strong tropical system. And the thing about this is we're starting to get into that time period of the year in hurricane season to where we have tropical systems that actually form over here, and they stay alive all the way through their lifespan and move about wherever they want. And to me, that's kind of cool. I'm not going to lie. Seeing a system last as long as it does, that's really cool. But of course, if we were to take a look at the Euro model more and more, you can see that this thing obviously becomes rather strong. Potentially, 964 millibar low pressure system, hurricane with that. So there's a wide variety of potential for tropical systems to form here. And as I said, we're getting to the peak of hurricane season. This is the time of year to where this is really going to start uptrending. So I'm going to try and keep up with it. I'm going to try and keep up with it, because it's going to be a lot. It's going to be a lot. Let's take a look at the satellite imagery. We're going to take a look at the water vapor imagery from the entire basin here of the Atlantic. First things first, the one thing that I do notice here, a lot of showers and thunderstorms over here in the southeastern portions of the United States. Look at that. Look at all the white little clouds that form over there. That's a lot of shower and thunderstorm activity that just popped up out of nowhere. But the areas to really watch out for is the system right here, which looks kind of weak. This system right here, which looks not as weak. And then this system right here, which looks like a bona fide threat, because it has so many showers and thunderstorms across the board that there's just basically an ample amount of moisture in the atmosphere. And so this is the, I guess this is the order of what we should look at. Invest 97L is right here. That was the first one to be designated because that was the first one to be found. Invest 98L, which is right here. Of course, that was the second one. And then Invest 99L. Now, of course, we can't have Invest 00L or Invest 1L. It goes back to Invest 90L for any of you who are curious. So most likely would be the next invest would be somewhere over here off the coast of Africa. Not designated quite yet, of course, but expected to do so a lot later. More in towards, I'd say, the end of this weekend into the beginning of next week. Sometime around that time frame. And so there's a lot of activity that I just pointed out here across the Atlantic. There's 4 different areas that we have to watch, and we're not even at the peak of hurricane season yet. Peak of hurricane season is at around September 10th to 11th, and we're just starting to get this activity. It's a good week and a half to 2 weeks before this stuff is expected to be at its worst. So major uptrend in activity as it continues to progress. And it's just, sheesh. So much of it. But there's a lot of stuff here to look at. And what tells me the most is that this system over here, which if we zoom into it, this system over here has the highest likelihood of forming over the next 5 days. Even though this has the same chance of formation with the system 97L, this has so many showers and thunderstorms. It has so much moisture, not as much shear and dry air for this thing to be able to basically kick it up a notch. And so that's the thing right there. I want to take a look real quickly. I want to go to the current storms, and I'm not going to look too much at Tropical Depression 14, although there's the cone of uncertainty, which it's expected to be a hurricane by the time it gets towards Baja California. So that's going to be interesting. You might have some monsoon conditions that extend further up, and you might have more flooding in the southwestern states of the United States. But that's not that big of a talking point as of right now. The big talking point here is 99L, and what I want to talk about here is the ceiling for development as well as the tracks for development. So let's take a look here real quickly. This is the GEFS track. These are the tracks of where the system could potentially go. And look at how widespread it is. It's not one area that it could hit. It's multiple. It's like having a bunch of different club members and one giant club. And so the club is the GEFS, and all these little lines are the different club members telling their opinions across the board. And so that's the reason why I have my landfall as far south as the border of Texas and Mexico, because I firmly believe, not just because this one model says it will, but because it could potentially do so based off of how far east and west it is in its formation over here in the Caribbean. I don't think it'll be that far inland over the Yucatan Peninsula, because if it's that far inland, then we won't have as significant of a storm, and that wouldn't make sense because you have other areas of wind shear that are influencing it a bit further towards the north. But, you know, the big thing here is that the big swath of where this thing could potentially be making landfall is as large as it is, and we really need to watch out. We really need to watch out for it. I said, and I'll be saying this over and over again, by this time tomorrow evening, all right, I'll be live streaming. I'll be live streaming at, say, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, so 5:30 p.m. Central Daylight Time. I will be live streaming again, and I will update you all again as to where this is all at. Of course, I'll upload a video tomorrow morning. It'll be a small video, but I'll be updating you guys. And I will tell you where this thing is going to most likely make landfall. Right now, my preliminary landfall area is somewhere in Louisiana. Specifically right in the middle of Louisiana. That's where, you know, my brain is taking me right now as to where this could potentially make landfall, just based off of the environment around it with the wind shear and the speed of which the system is moving. That's where I'm thinking right now, somewhere in Louisiana. But, of course, as I mentioned, it could be anywhere within that area. That's where I'm thinking. So what that tells me here is that areas in the Florida Peninsula, you guys are fine. You guys might get some outer bands from this system, but you guys should be fine. Definitely a case in this instance here where you guys are spared, all right? You had, what, 2-3 tropical systems that moved through your area here already. You guys get a little bit of a break. You might get a little bit of activity a bit later on to the beginning of September into the mid parts of September. But as of right now, you guys get a bit of a break, okay? But an area that will most likely see reoccurring activity, very similar to what they had last year with the devastating hurricanes that they had in Lake Charles, Louisiana seems to be the area to watch here. Now, Another thing here too that we can notice just based off of this swath is the further west you go, the stronger the tropical system is. And what I mean by that is, look at the right-hand side here, this color code. This color code indicates the minimum low pressure of the system. So the lower the pressure, the stronger the storm is going to be. So areas up here in this blue, green, yellow, that's around tropical storm strength. The oranges and reds, that's about category 1 to approaching category 2. 970 to 960 is about category 2 to even category 3 strength. And then 950 to 940 is about category 4. And then a little bit lower than that is category 4 to category 5. So the big thing here to notice is that over here in Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, and the Panhandle, Florida, you have a lot of these reds to dark reds, which indicate about category 2 to category 3 strength. That's what the HWRF model said, except actually a little bit worse as a category 4 hurricane hitting Louisiana over here, as you can see. So if we go back over here, these models actually said that it's going to be a lot weaker. HWRF, by the way, is a worst case scenario indicator, so don't treat it as, you know, a set in stone thing. All right, these models can change at any point in time. Trust me, they do all the time. Track can change, intensity can change, whatever can change, just with a little influence. As of right now, you know, I'm not seeing this change all too much, but I think it could change within the next day or so. But then, you know, if we don't look at areas over here in the deep south, near Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, let's take a look over here, the areas near Texas. Notice how there's pinks and even purples here. And the reason why that is because it has a lot more time over water compared from going, I'll draw a line here, compared from going from here to here, it now has more time from here to here. Much longer line in that instance, and that tells you that it has a lot more time over that warm and unstable water as it approaches the coast. So that's the big thing here, all right? If it does move further west, it will be a lot stronger. If it moves a bit further east, it still will be strong, don't get me wrong. But it will most likely not be, you know, like, it's, I say most likely not. There's still a small possibility, but it most likely not will be the worst case scenario. But it definitely could. It definitely could. Now, the reason why I say that the instability is very high within this area is because I'm going to take a look over here at the tropics real quickly. And I'm going to show you the tropical cyclone heat potential map. All right. I'm going to show you the heat potential within this general area right here. And let's see if I can find it here. Yeah, it should be good. I think it should be fine. I'd have to find as to where I can find it. So give me a second. Sea surface temperatures, is that it? Salinity? No, that's definitely not it. Well, this should be fine. All right, we're going to open the image in a new tab and just roll with it. So look at this. All right, look at this across the board here of the globe. Of course, you know, this is looking at a giant image. So it's not exactly where one point ends and where one point begins. It's just, if you can imagine this point, this part of the model over here, the image over here, basically starting again over here. It's just a whole continuous loop around. So areas in dark blue doesn't have a whole lot of energy. Okay? Doesn't really have a whole lot of energy. Areas in the yellow to orange has a bit of energy for it to intensify further. And you can see that there is some over here in the Caribbean. So if you can tap into that before it continues to move on through, it can set itself up for it to intensify further. So it basically is kind of like a kickstart. So tropical cyclone heat potential basically is a kickstart for the system. Almost like lighting a fire on gasoline. It spreads and becomes a lot more violent. And then, of course, the areas in the red and the pink, that's when there's a lot of energy within that area. So there's definitely a lot of potential there within the system. And then if we take a look real quickly over at the sea surface temperatures over here, not in Africa, but over in the Gulf of Mexico. Well, actually, let's take a look at the Caribbean. Caribbean is better. These are the current sea surface temperatures as of, I think this is today. Actually, no, it's yesterday. I'm sorry. It was yesterday. So if we look through here and I scroll down a little bit and I show you the actual color code for what each temperature is supposed to be, which, by the way, it is in Celsius, we have some very hot temperatures here in the Gulf of Mexico. I mean, look at this. Look at all this brown within this general area right here. That is temperatures of 29 degrees Celsius and above. That's over 90 degrees Fahrenheit. Over 90 degrees Fahrenheit. That is very hot. We even have some sea surface temperatures waters over here in Louisiana, where the system, according to most models, is expected to go to in upwards of 32 degrees Celsius. 32 degrees Celsius. That is significant. That is very significant. And if we take a look at the sea surface temperature anomaly, it's a little bit below average over here in areas of the Caribbean, but look at how above average over here it is. That is very high above average. Let's see if we can go into the Gulf of Mexico and get specifically. We have some temperatures that are 5 degrees above average here. 5 degrees above average. That is very warm. That is very hot. And so, if this continues to trend the way that it does, yeah, it'll be tapping into that very warm water. And it could potentially be, it could potentially have a time period to where it could rapidly intensify. So that's the big thing here. We have to watch out for its period of rapid intensification as it continues to move off towards the north and west. Will it do so? I mean, it's definitely a possibility. I'd say, if there wasn't a couple other factors that are holding me back of saying so, then I probably would say that it would be stronger than just a hurricane getting into the Gulf of Mexico. Because I think at some point when this system heads into the Gulf of Mexico, it will be a hurricane. All right, somewhere in there. Somewhere, we'll go somewhere in here. It will be a hurricane. That is how confident I am about this system. Now, how strong it will be, that's a little bit different. But that's what I'm saying right now. This will most likely become a hurricane here. So yeah, I will be uploading videos every single morning, short little videos. And then I will be doing these live tropical updates every evening, giving you guys live update information. All sorts of satellite analysis and stuff like that. So if you guys are willing to stay tuned to the channel, please be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. We have satellite data, Hurricane Hunter data. The Hurricane Hunters are actually anticipated to go tomorrow. I actually think they have a schedule to go out tomorrow. It would be the Air Force reconnaissance, not the NOAA Hurricane reconnaissance. So we'll be covering the Hurricane Hunters. We'll be covering satellite, radar, all sorts of stuff. We'll have all sorts of information here for you. Excuse my language, but the HWRF model is aka the OMG model. Yeah, no intended. Hope you're not blocked. No, you're not. You're fine. And that's exactly what it is. It's basically the worst case scenario indicator. So the general consensus is this thing is going to Louisiana. More than likely, there's a lot of opinions that say it will do so. But there are a couple that say it could head off to Texas, and that's the reason why I said we're going to have a lot more information as to where this will be going specifically by the time we get to this time period tomorrow evening. So as I said, we'll be live streaming tomorrow night, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, 5:30 p.m. Central Daylight Time. And I will get you guys the latest information, everything you need. We'll even react to the advisory at 8 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, 7 p.m. Central Daylight Time together and see when it will continue. The other thing, too, here as well is that if this thing does make landfall, I will be live streaming that, too. And we could possibly, depending upon where it makes landfall, we could possibly also have a storm chaser there who will show us live footage as to what all is going on. And he'll just be reporting for us, not reporting the channel. Geez, that would be terrible. But he will be reporting for us and giving us live information of what is happening there, wind data, all sorts of stuff there, visibility, storm surge, everything. But it would have to depend upon where it's making landfall. But other than that, we will cover it all for you. And we will try and keep you guys up to date as much as possible. Will Belize get hit? Belize could definitely get the outer bands of the system, but it probably won't be as strong as it's expected to be by the time it passes Belize. So it'll be a little bit weaker. Have I seen the recent update from the National Hurricane Center? They shifted it back south. So are you talking about the... Here, let's go to the archive outlook. Earlier. It's about the same in my honest opinion. It's about the same, actually. How many miles wide would be this thing? So it would honestly have to depend, as I mentioned, but let's take a measuring tool, shall we? Let's take a measuring tool and see how wide the actual system could potentially be. ETA on landfall, Sunday night into Monday, depending upon what day Monday, or what time of the day Monday, into Tuesday morning. That's the ETA right now for when this thing could potentially be making landfall. All right, so let's see. How wide is this thing? This thing is... approximately about over 30, not over 30, over 300 nautical miles wide would be the, would be how wide this thing is according to the HWRF model. According to the GFS, it's a little bit larger than that. Actually, it's a lot larger than that. So sheesh. So yeah, let's just say it's pretty wide. Let's go nautical miles to miles. And we'll go... Yeah, there we go. So we'll go 290. Yeah, 290 nautical miles results to 333 miles. So if we had, say, 350 nautical miles, which is what the GFS anticipates, it's about 400 miles wide. So we'll just go with the conservative estimate and say about 325 to 350 miles wide as of right now. Could be larger. But that's if the system if it is set in stone as a major tropical system. All right? As I said, still need this thing to continue to form first. It hasn't formed yet. But the wave that this thing is riding along to where it could potentially form is still very active. And we are anticipating it to form within the next 24 to 48 hours. Or at least I'm thinking it's going to form within that time frame. It's just, it looks so organized right now. I mean, not organized as a designated tropical system, but as a tropical wave It's very organized. Is this going to be a super hurricane? Super hurricanes are what, category 4 and category 5, right? So if it's according to the HWRF model, as of right now, this thing takes it to a category 4 status, which would be a super hurricane. But you know, I'd say regardless at this point, whether it is a low-end hurricane or a high-end hurricane, I'd say prepare anyways. This is a good chance for people to go ahead and get their proper precautions out already, get their plans of action, even for as we continue, even for the future, as we continue to move along into hurricane season. Because we're at August 25th, 2021, guys, and the peak of hurricane season is September 10th to September 11th. That's the peak of hurricane season. So if we are anticipating more storms to potentially form, and of course we can't exactly know as to where those future storms will be exactly, although more data is starting to come in to where we might actually be able to, maybe not this year, but a few years from now we might be able to, then we'll be able to, well, the big thing here is that if there's more storms that are expected to come here, it's better to be prepared. It's better to be prepared. It's a whole lot better to not rush it the last couple of days where it's expected to make landfall and just gradually anticipate as to when this is going to move about. Better safe than sorry in any instance. So, could it affect Alabama? Yeah, it definitely could. About 1/3 of the width of Texas. Okay, that's capable. Yeah, that's pretty large. Is it possible to see another Harvey the way it hit, turned around, and then came back? Lord, I hope not. Well, that's what the GFS said over here with this stupid track towards the end. I don't understand what the GFS was doing here, because this isn't how weather is actually supposed to work. But we could potentially see a tropical system from this. And what I'm talking about here, guys, is that after this system, all right, this is another thing to remember too. After this system, I want you guys to pay attention sometime from August 1st to August 31st to September 1st. All right, that time period right around there. I want you guys to watch out for another tropical system to form somewhere around Central America, North and South America. That storm could potentially form, and where that goes, of course, I have no clue. All right. But according to this latest run of the GFS, it pulled some form of, I don't know, and it basically stalled over the Cozumel, I should say, right next to the Cayman Islands. And then it turned around, flipped around, formed into a major hurricane, and then bing, bang, boom, who knows? And then this storm formed out of nowhere too. So, you know, it's just all sorts of craziness that happens after a week in advance from the models, because tropical weather is pretty hard to predict. But anything under 7 days is typically when we can start to be able to predict these storms. Will these storms be able to, or will this system end up moving into the Cayman Islands? Most likely. As a matter of fact, I am anticipating this to move into your general vicinity, but probably as a potential tropical storm. It won't be a significant storm like Grace for you all, so that's the good news. But if it does rapidly intensify, I'm expecting it to stay within the tropical storm strength and not a hurricane strength. So that's my forecast for that. We are at 13,410 subscribers. Thank you guys so much. I really do appreciate it. I really do appreciate all the support that you guys give me. And as I said, I'm going to be continuing to give you guys as much information as possible leading up to the potential landfall. As I said, landfall is expected sometime Sunday evening into Monday into Tuesday morning. All right, it's within that time frame. And the reason why it's that wide of a time frame is because it really has to depend upon where it begins to start building energy. All right. According to this model right here, This thinks that it'll make landfall sometime Sunday night into Monday morning. All right, so that's the one thing right there. All right, we got a couple models that are saying it's around that time frame. But then you have a couple other models that say, all right, if it doesn't hit Louisiana, if it doesn't hit Mississippi and Alabama, it could hit Texas. And it could be a little bit later, sometime Monday afternoon into evening, into Tuesday morning, sometime around that time frame. So, you know, it's pretty widespread as to where this could potentially make landfall and impact. But the big thing here as of right now is that this most likely will be a hurricane. This most likely will be a hurricane on its approach into the United States. My prediction here, my prediction only, not the National Hurricane Centers. I don't speak for the National Hurricane Center a whole lot, unless if I show their graphics, okay? Which I highly recommend checking out the National Hurricane Center for any of the best information, of course. But I definitely think that as soon as it gets into the Gulf of Mexico, within its lifespan there from passing Cuba and the Yucatan Peninsula of Mexico towards where it approaches Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, Texas, it will become a hurricane. 100%. That is, I cannot enforce how much confidence I have in this to most likely form into a hurricane. And most models even anticipate this to rapidly intensify as it moves further up towards the north and west. With that being the case, how strong will it rapidly intensify? That's a little harder to answer. That is actually very hard to answer because rapid intensification is not exactly the easiest thing to predict. As a matter of fact, a lot of people are trying to study that even after they went to college in it. And like even PhDs, even doctors in meteorology, they are still trying to figure out stuff about rapid intensification. There's only one model that gets it, but the only issue is that it wants to make every single storm, even if it's not supposed to rapidly intensify, to rapidly intensify. So it's basically, all right, well, what happens if it rapidly intensifies? Let's take a look at this model, and then boom. They go off of that as well. So the big thing here is that it will not, most likely will not hit the Florida Peninsula. That's the big thing there. Most likely will not hit the Florida Peninsula. But the other thing is that it most likely will go into this general vicinity over here of the border of Mexico and Texas, all the way through towards Pensacola, Florida. Within this area right here, that is where I am expecting this to make landfall. Somewhere right there. But if you were to ask me specifically as to where this makes landfall, I'd have to say right in the middle of Louisiana, probably near Intracoastal City in Lafayette. That's probably my best guess as of right now. Now, that is subject to change. As I look more and more into the models, it will probably change eventually. But as of right now, I'd have to say central portions of Louisiana. Probably my best guess. Now, the one thing that I do want to mention here real quickly is that, you know, I do try to make these live streams, these videos. I made my channel on the premise of trying to inform as many people as possible to try and help people. So if you know anyone who lives in these areas, I highly recommend sending any one of my videos or my live streams that I've done recently discussing either these tropical systems or past tropical systems to these people. And they might enjoy this type of content, and they might actually get more information from this type of content, more than some other channels, maybe more than some other news agencies. That's what I try and strive here for, is I try to protect, I try to help and protect as many people as possible, and I try to save some lives. And that's exactly what I'm trying to do here, because this is a very serious situation. So if you know anyone who lives in these areas, or if you live in these areas, or if you even know anyone who might even enjoy this content, please share this with them. Please share this to live stream, get the link, and just, you know, pop it over to them. That'd be greatly appreciated. And another way, too, to help spread the information is by liking the live stream. You guys actually help me get this onto YouTube so that YouTube can actually get this out to more and more people's recommended feeds. That would be greatly appreciated. because it's, as I said, all about trying to help as many people as possible. So, thank you so much for all your guys' support for my channel. And as I said, yeah, let's just hope that this thing isn't as significant as most of the models think they will be. I want to take a look at another model here. We're going to take a look at the HMON model. And the HMON is very different from the HWRF model. Very different from the HWRF model, but at the same time, it also kind of gets the premise of rapid intensification as well. So let's take a look at what the HMON model does over the next couple of days, as well as its approach towards the coast of the Gulf of Mexico. So as we continue to move on through, this is Thursday morning into Thursday afternoon. Right there is Jamaica on the top right-hand part of your screen. You can also see Grand Cayman right there. And this thing really starts to kind of consolidate, trying to intensify further and further as it continues to move off towards the north. So strong tropical storm heading off towards Cuba. As I mentioned, you know, probably not going to be major impacts over into the Cayman Islands and Jamaica. Just probably will try and continue to intensify further and further. And then as this continues to move off further past Cuba into the Gulf of Mexico, this thing is then anticipated to rapidly intensify and become relatively strong on its approach to wherever this may be. And in this instance, this ends up being Louisiana near Lake Charles. According to the HMON, this actually ends up being a 938 millibar low pressure system. And that's pretty significant as well. It even has some strong sustained winds of 109 knots. 109 knots. For any of you who are curious as to what 109 knots is to miles per hour, that is 125 miles per hour, or a Category 3 major hurricane. So, the two models that say that this thing will rapidly intensify think that the ceiling for this storm is Category 3 to Category 4. And the reason why I say Category 4 is because the other model that I was talking about, the HWRF model, if we go over to that, shows that this thing has 118 knots as a sustained wind speed, which would translate to 135 miles per hour, or a Category 4. So that's the big thing there, is that the worst case scenario models think that this will be a major hurricane. Some other models, you know, Category 1, Category 2, maybe Category 3, depending upon the premise of the system as it continues to propagate further northward. But the general consensus here from all the models, and, you know, me, myself, just looking at most of the environmental conditions out in front of the system to try and see if these models are actually out of their mind or not, this most likely will become a hurricane. Most likely, within its lifespan, become a hurricane. So, this is something we really got to watch out for as this continues to move on forward. Now, another thing that I want to mention here, on another note, a separate note, I want to take a look at the Euro model here for you all. The European model. And this is going to tell us bunch of different things. All right, first off, this is going to tell us, if I can pull up the vorticity, there we go. This is going to tell us a lot of things. First off, the areas in yellow, orange, and dark red, that tells you enhanced areas of vorticity. So obviously tropical systems create a lot of vorticity, they spin a lot, and so it's going to definitely pick up within bits of a specific system. So just realize, if you see a lot of, you know, orange or red, that tells you that there is a lot of vorticity within a specific area. So looking at the European model, there right here is the tropical system Invest 99L, which could either be Julian, or Ida. Most likely will be Ida if this system in the middle of the Atlantic doesn't form first. This system will continue to move about, but then you also have, as I mentioned, the system in central Atlantic, as well as this potential system over here approaching the Lesser Antilles. And then you also have this other area to watch over here along Africa. And you guys might be wondering, well, what do you mean? There's no areas of real red over there. I mean, there's a little orange, there's a little yellow, but there's nothing over there. What are you talking about, Nate? And if we play this out, look at how things change here very quickly. Very quickly, within the time period of August 31st to September 1st, we will have two areas to really watch. First things first, with the GFS mentioned that something could potentially form over here near Central America and the northern portions of South America due to the fact that there's a lot of thunderstorm development over there. And we'll continue to watch that as that continues to propagate forward, because that's a little bit closer to home. I'm pretty sure everyone can admit that the distance between this and this system over here near the Cabo Verde Islands and Florida is non-comparable. So this area would be obviously the one to watch for the most. But we also have this system that comes off of Africa, this wave that comes off of Africa. And as we continue to watch it, as it continues to move further and further to the west, it not only becomes a lot stronger, but it heads into the general vicinity of the United States. This actually taking it a little bit further to the north, meaning that this system could potentially move up the East Coast, or it could steer up along near Bermuda. So it's not exactly set in stone as to where this system could potentially go if it does form. But the big consensus here is that we're not done with tropical weather, all right? Hurricane season is now starting to ramp up significantly. And we're going to start talking about a lot of tropical systems. There's a lot of them. So if we are really going to, have to watch out for and see how this continues to move on through, we got to stay up to date with it as much as possible. And I'm going to try and do so every single time with my videos, my live streams, landfalls and stuff like that, landfall live streams. I'm going to try and watch out for that as much as possible. So if you guys are willing to stick with me as long as possible, that would be greatly appreciated. What makes the storms in Africa? It's monsoon season over there. It's monsoon season over there. So those thunderstorms that just move off of Africa from the monsoon, that's what creates these tropical storms, and even hurricanes in some instances. In my personal opinion, do you honestly think that the storm could come up Barataria Bay? I mean, if it moves a bit further east, I definitely think it could. But personally, I think it probably could be a little bit further to the west. As of right now, my gut feeling is that it could be a little bit further off to the west, near Intracoastal City. So that would be near Morgan City. Maybe even further south of Lafayette. That's my feeling right now as to where I think the system could potentially be. What's the percentage that it could hit Galveston, Texas? I would say at this moment probably a 20 to 25% chance. That is my feeling right now with this system. Let's take a look and see. How are we looking in Hickory, North Carolina? North Carolina, you got a lot of showers and thunderstorms over there, so not exactly expected to be all too significant. And that's going to be mainly the case here for quite some time. And yeah, you just have some scattered showers and thunderstorms, so not anything too significant. Let's see. So this is the latest GEFS guidance, and I think this is a lot more widespread than I think we all expected. Look at that. That's the latest. I just refreshed it, and that's the latest guidance from the GFS. So wow. Can I zoom into this? I can barely. Let me do something here real quickly. Did I not fix the donation button? Unfortunately, no. Unfortunately, no, because I actually completely forgot. Why do storms in Africa move east to west, and the one in North America move west to east? It all depends upon the motion of the Atlantic. So, with the Atlantic, if we zoom out here again, go to the water vapor imagery, notice how we have a bunch of activity that move in this general direction here. And the reason being why this is because the general flow of the system, the general flow is that there's a lot of strong jet streams, a lot of strong wind patterns that move this way. And then there's a lot of strong wind patterns that move this way. And so it's just the general motion of that. Especially with where we are in the world. So in the northern hemisphere, that's basically where it is. And then in the southern hemisphere, it's the opposite. So, you know, if you can imagine that this is up here where the equator is, same thing. This would be going this way, and then the bottom would be heading the opposite direction. So, yep. Let's see if I can do it here. Do I have a picture? Yes, I do. I think hopefully there we go. Okay. So look at this, guys. This is the latest guidance from the GEFS. And I think this goes to show you how pretty significant this could potentially be in the future. We got a lot of these oranges and reds here close to the coast. A lot of these oranges and reds. And if that comes into fruition, of course, that'll be your hurricane making landfall. But then we also have a couple pinks in there too. And those pinks, according to this guideline, is below 940 millibars, which would be about a Category 4 hurricane. So that's pretty significant as well. We even have a couple of reds. That's about 4 reds here that I see. So that's about a Category 2 to a Category 3 hurricane. Actually seems to be a Category 3 hurricane, so my apologies. And then we have a bunch of oranges across the board too. So the general consensus here is that a lot of these models do tend to show this as a hurricane on its approach to landfall. That's the big thing there. With one of which, this is an outlier here, but this is also a possibility that we need to watch out for. This system right here that goes right near Mobile, Alabama, also intensifies into a potential Category 3, Category 4 hurricane as well. So this is something that we need to watch out too. If this thing does rapidly intensify as it does, heading off into the United States, this is definitely something that we're going to have to watch out for 100%. I think the hurricane passing through Alabama may not have great tornado chance on 9/5. Specific conditions continue to be met. Ryan Hall pointed that out. I'm kind of confused as the point he was trying to make here. Looking and working seems legit. Passing through Alabama may have a great tornado chance on 9/5 if conditions continue to be met. I mean, maybe. The only thing with that is that the Euro model isn't exactly the best thing to use in that instance. Let's go with the 250 millibar winds. We'll go with the Western Atlantic. All right, so this is after it makes landfall here. So we're looking at September 1st, and the flow is that way. So, according to this latest model, they're expecting this to move through well beyond September 5th, sometime around September 2nd, 3rd, 4th. I'd say September 2nd and 3rd is when the system officially moves out of the United States. Could be a strong, severe threat for the Northeast by that time period, though. But I definitely think there's a little bit of an issue. Well, not exactly an issue. I definitely think you can't exactly rely on the models very far out past a week. Past a week, that's when things really start to get very inaccurate. So I guess it's more or less just anticipating all possibilities. But when looking at tropical weather and stuff like that, I wouldn't be using the Euro for that designation. But I do think that there will be a tornado threat with 99L if it does make impacts along the coast, which is anticipated, that it could potentially intensify significantly and that it could reach land by that time period. And we'll take a look at that again here with the HWRF model. Of course, this is the worst case scenario indicator model. So this basically looks at what could be the worst case scenario here. Whether it rapidly intensifies significantly or not. And so we love to use this because we have to consider the following. I have to consider everything. But this model right here takes it as a unfortunate category 4 hurricane that hits somewhere here near Lafayette. Maybe a little bit further to the west of Lafayette. Lafayette being right about here. And the system going up this way. So really something we have to watch out for. If this thing does intensify significantly, then this is going to be a system to really watch out for. As I said, could be potentially significant. But as of right now, it all determines upon where it starts to form. How many days out is this? It's about, say, 5 or 6 days out. It is anticipated to make landfall sometime along Sunday evening into Monday morning, as well as if it does move a bit further to the west, then that timeline could be Monday afternoon to even the evening hours and eventually towards Tuesday morning as well. Is there going to be a bad storm in upstate South Carolina tomorrow, particularly near Clemson? Let's take a look real quickly. I'll go to another website here. I'll see what your outlook is for tomorrow. You guys could get some scattered showers and thunderstorms, but nothing too significant, honestly. Could a Category 5 be possible with the for one of these canes? I mean, honestly, I can't answer that. I'm going to be completely honest with you. I cannot answer as to whether or not it will be a Category 5 hurricane. Because that's just really, really hard for me to predict intensity in that instance. So as I said, I will continue to inform you guys more and more as time moves along. Of course, I will be live streaming most likely every single evening. I'm probably going to start live streaming at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, 5:30 p.m. Central Daylight Time. And of course, I'll live stream past that, past 8 o'clock into most likely the 9 and 10 o'clock hours Eastern. So we'll continue to do that every single evening. Of course, I'll upload a video every single morning as much as I can to try and inform you guys as much as possible here. And then I'll continue to do that. I'll continue to upload videos all throughout hurricane season. I'm going to try and give you guys as much information as possible through hurricane season, even into winter with, snow, ice, and then eventually into next year's tornado season. Or Tornado Alley events. I want to see if they've updated anything with the satellite data. And if they have, I'm going to be pretty happy. I don't see anything there. Unfortunately, I don't see anything there either. So that's nice. What about here? I don't see anything there either. So that's unfortunate, but not that unfortunate. We'll have more data later at another time. If the storm does go, where do I say, what would be the impact for southern Mississippi? That's a good question. As of right now, as I said, the damage path, or the general areas to where this could make impacts, very hard to tell for sure. But my gut feeling is saying that it most likely will be making landfall somewhere in central Louisiana, although it can extend as far. The landfall could be as far east as Pensacola, could be as far west as the border of Texas and Mexico. So, you know, very hard to say specifically as to where this could potentially be making landfall. But the impacts for Mississippi also derive around that as well. So if it goes exactly where I think it will, or it goes a bit further east of that towards Pensacola and Mobile, then the impacts for Mississippi could potentially be a lot worse, including some strong damaging winds, maybe some widespread power outages. Yeah, tornado threat is definitely possible with that as well. And so, as well as flooding, of course. Flooding will definitely be an issue as well if these storms do create impacts. So, that's the thing. A lot of factors come into it. But the big thing here that we do know now is that there is a hurricane that's most likely, well, not exactly, it's not defined, but I have a high confidence that this could be a hurricane. Very high confidence. Almost 100% confidence that it'll become a hurricane. And this most likely will be making landfall somewhere along the Gulf Coast of the United States. But it's not officially designated as a tropical system yet. It's a area to watch by the National Hurricane Center. Officially designated as Invest 99L. Air Force reconnaissance aircraft is scheduled to investigate the system Thursday afternoon if necessary. So they are anticipating that there could be a mission out to the system, and they could be trying to figure out if this is an actual confirmed storm. And then, of course, if it is, that could influence as to how strong this could be as it moves on further north. Excuse me. Could this be another Laura? Well, I mean, it's in the same environment and conditions as Laura, and it's coming from the same area as Laura. So it definitely could. But as I said, rapid intensification or even intensification in general is very hard to predict, although it will be in an intensifying phase heading into the Gulf of Mexico, and most likely will be a hurricane once it gets into the Gulf of Mexico. So it definitely could. I can't rule that out. But it's as of right now, I'm going to be pretty conservative. Let's see. Is there anything else that I should talk about here before I head off for the evening? Any questions that you guys may have? Any questions? Willing to take questions here. As I said, you know, I'll continue to update as much as possible, you guys, with this system. You know, I'll upload videos in the morning. It'll be short videos, and when I mean short videos, I mean around 15 to 20 minutes long, something like that. And I'll still have my live streams in the evening. So if you guys want to stick around, please be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications and stuff like that. If you have friends who may want to pay attention to this, share this channel with them as well. But, yeah, as much as, you know, I'm going to try and inform you all as much as I can. Where am I from, if you can ask? Sure, I'm in southern Pennsylvania. I was originally from West Virginia, but moved up here to Pennsylvania. A lot of stuff. Did I have a good day? Yes, I did have a good day, actually. Thank you for asking. How about yourself? How about yourself? Let's see. Could this become a Category 3 hurricane? It definitely could. Definitely could become a major hurricane. What are the water temperatures in the Gulf of Mexico right now? Very hot. Very hot. Some areas here near the Yucatan Peninsula are below average. So some areas here indicated in blue and green. These are below average temperatures. But then once you get closer and closer towards the coast, you can see some of these oranges and even reds in some instances indicate very warm above average temperatures. Some of which indicate 3 to even 5 degrees above average in some instances. Within this average of averages here near Louisiana, it's about 2 to 3 degrees above average. So very warm temperatures as you progressively get closer and closer towards land. And of course, they're still going to be pretty warm in the general. If we go to the actual temperatures across the board, you can see a lot of those browns. And the one thing that I think most people have learned here in tropical weather is that if you ever see brown here with sea surface temperatures, that tells you that you are in very favorable conditions for tropical weather to amplify further and further. So definitely something interesting to watch out for. But yeah, 29 to 30 degrees Celsius, which would be about 90 degrees Fahrenheit across the board. What do I think about the AEW that has greater model support? I mean, definitely like it. I definitely like the, I definitely like its, what's it? Come on. I definitely like its chances. I definitely like its chances more. More inclined to look at them a little bit more, actually. But as of right now, of course, I'm trying to use as much as possible. So, use as many models as possible. But yeah, I like it. I like it. Could this be another Laura? As I said, definitely was possible. Definitely is possible. Did I enjoy dinner? I liked it. It was pretty good. Had some fish. Flounder. It's not bad. What do I think about the 15% on day 4? I'll have to talk about that a little bit later. No possibility of a Category 4 even before landfall. It definitely has a possibility. There's some models that think it will be a Category 4. But I'm not going to say for certain because it's kind of a bold claim to make right now. So I think my claim as of this instance is most likely will be a hurricane. Most likely will be a hurricane. Last question for the night from me. What are the impacts do we think we can expect in the La Forge-Pera area? The thing about it is, the La Forge Parish, I should say. Jeez. So the thing of it is that, as I mentioned, very hard for me to say as to specifically which area could see impacts. However, I will say this, because you are relatively close to the coast. I would say if the system isn't going to impact you, expect rip current risks to be pretty strong, pretty high. And then if you are going to be impacted, which most likely will be the case, expect storm surge to be relatively high, along with the tornado threat to be high, and flooding to be a threat. Big threat there. So if you're hit by this system, probably should probably should seek further shelter inland, because some areas could potentially be flooded. Although I know they have some levees over there, so they might be protecting that. But I don't really see it. Going back to some of the questions here. A tornado is stronger than a hurricane, but a hurricane can do the same exact damage as a tornado, more widespread, and a lot more of a duration than a tornado. Yep, this is true. And fun fact, hurricanes can even have tornadoes, even within their eye wall. Even within their eye wall. What is the average time frame of 99L staying over the Gulf? A couple of days, I believe. Let's take a look back over here from the HWRF model, because I'm more inclined to use this because of track. It's really good with track, not exactly the best with intensity, because it expects everything to be worst case scenario. So it's expected to get into the Gulf of Mexico by Friday night into Saturday morning. And it's expected to stay in the Gulf of Mexico from Saturday morning all the way until Sunday evening. So that'd be almost a full 48 hours. And that time frame of it intensifying is probably a lot. So most likely will be pretty high chance for it to intensify, not just into a hurricane, but maybe even stronger than that. But I'm going to say hurricane right now, just to be conservative. Screw the spaghetti models. I want to hear your honest opinion based off of what wind shear and pressure along with warm waters on where the storm will end up. Not adhering to the models. Central Louisiana. That's where I'm thinking. Things can change, but central to eastern Louisiana is where I'm thinking. Not as far west as this model here. Probably somewhere here near Intracoastal City in Lafayette. Maybe even all the way over to near Grand Isle. Somewhere right around there is where I'm thinking. Wouldn't that intensify the hurricane more with high water temperatures? Yes, it will. And it could intensify stronger than just a Category 1 hurricane, which is the reason why I'm trying to get this information out as much as possible. You're supposed to go on vacation to Houston next week for your birthday. This is discouraging. Well, it'd have to depend upon where this thing is going, but if this thing goes a little bit further to the east of you, you guys should be fine besides being on the beach and all. This is my first hurricane memory. Yours is Ivan. In regards to getting hit by one, I'd say Sandy. I'd definitely say Sandy. What forecasting sites do I use? Tropical Tidbits, Pivotal Weather, Weather Bell, Weather Nerds, and then, of course, National Hurricane Center Storm Prediction Center, Weather Prediction Center. You've never seen Pecos Hank cover a hurricane? Do you ever wonder why? Probably because he just covers, he mainly chases severe weather setups. I believe that's the case from him. The pronunciation was horrible. Give you props. Well, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. As I said, if I butcher people's names and stuff like that, I'm sorry. If I even butcher people's town names, I'm sorry. Let us see. Is it coming for Texas? It definitely has a possibility for it to do so. Probably about a 20% chance, maybe a 25% chance for it to head towards Texas. Watching from southwestern Montana, I appreciate you watching from that far away, even though this isn't expected to hit you. Is it possible? Can it hit Central Florida? Yes or no? I'd have to say no. At this instance, I'd have to say no. Is this going to hit Houston? Yeah, as I said, possibility for it to do so. Probably 20 to 25% chance that it could hit Houston. Imagine if a tornado could spawn hurricanes. That would be terrifying. Thanks for the update. Liked and shared on MeUI. Thank you so much. As I said, people who help me share this information as much as possible, thank you. I really do appreciate it. I really do appreciate it. So thank you guys so much. How Higher than a hurricane? What I mean by that is higher than a Category 1 hurricane. Might be a major hurricane. Maybe. What's up, man? First time to your channel. I really do appreciate it. As I said, you know, I try and cover as much as possible. Right now I'm in the Q&A portion of the live stream, and then we'll cut back to the live analysis and stuff like that. But yeah, I try to cover the tropics as much as possible, try to inform people as much as possible. I try to cover severe weather as much as possible as well. All sorts of stuff that I try to do. So if you guys want to stick around, feel free to do so. When will it get a name? When will it become a hurricane? Most likely we'll get a name within the next 24 hours to 48 hours. And it most likely will be a hurricane by the time it gets to the Gulf of Mexico, sometime in between Saturday and Sunday. Curtis Bowes with the $5 super chat. Thank you, my friend. I really do appreciate it. I really do. Is the storm following the track like Katrina? Katrina went through Florida, so no. This system will not be going through Florida. Which side will be the nasty side, and which side will be the calm based off of what I see? Well, if this thing intensifies as strong as it does, then both sides will be pretty bad. But if you want an answer as to which side will be the worst, it'd have to be the eastern side. Eastern side is typically the worst, specifically the northeastern side. They get tornadoes, they get strong damaging winds, they get storm surge, flooding across the board. So yeah, might have a tornado warning in Florida. I'll take a look at that here in a second. Definitely will. Do La Niñas affect hurricane season like it does with regular storm seasons? Yes, it does. Yes, it does. La Niñas basically mean most likely will be a higher risk for storms in the Gulf of Mexico. Far away watching from Germany? Well, wow. That's pretty far away, so thank you so much. I really do appreciate watching from another country. Thank you. Family is in the Lafayette, Louisiana area. Well, I will continue to watch out for this as much as possible as this continues to move on through into your general vicinity. So if you want to stick around, show my channel to them as well, then feel free to do so, because I'm going to try and, as I said, cover this. Mikey Hawk with the $2 super chat says possible tornado warning in Florida. Yep. Let's actually go ahead and take a look at it real quickly before we go back into the tropical weather coverage here. So it doesn't look like there is a tornado warning here. But there is a tornado possible tag on this system, on this lines of storms that are moving on through here in Palm Beach. In regards to whether or not there could be a tornado warning, let's take a look at the velocities. And I don't exactly see a whole lot from it. We'll go over here to the base velocity with this near Palm Beach, and I don't see a whole lot with it. So there might be some water spouts. I don't exactly anticipate this to be super significant, I should say. This is the good news. Watching from Australia. Well, wow. Thank you for watching from Australia as well. It's possible Central Florida can get hit by a tropical storm or a hurricane. Possibly sometime this year, but not with this system, honestly. Not with this system. If 99L tracks further south and west towards Texas, will it be a low to mid hurricane? Most northern track has it intensifying the most. That's what I was saying earlier too. It'll have more time over water, which most likely will be the factor that this thing could potentially be significant if it tracks towards Texas. That's if it tracks towards Texas. It'll be stronger than most likely when it hits Louisiana, according to most models. Maybe his name could be Ida or Julian. Yep. It probably will be Ida, because this system is expected to form earlier than the system in the Atlantic, but that's the thing. Watching from Nassau, Bahamas, outstanding work. Well, thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. And you guys are expected to get a lot of activity here, well, typically every single season with tropical weather. So, as I said, I'll continue to try and cover as much for you as much as possible. So feel free to feel free to come back to the channel whenever you feel like it. All right, let's go back to the coverage here, and we'll go in depth as to why this is doing what it's doing. And why it's looking like what it's looking like at the moment here. So we'll go to the 500 millibar vorticity in wind. So areas in the shaded areas show a lot of vorticity, basically meaning tropical systems. We also have wind barbs here that tell us the direction of the wind. So if you ever see a wind barb, it looks like this, and then it has a bunch of sticks at the end or whatever, maybe even a triangle. It just means that on the opposite side of where the sticks are, that's where the wind is heading towards. So it's basically, if you see a wind barb like this, the wind is heading from east to west. Same thing as if it was moving in the opposite direction as well. If you see it like this, it's moving from west to east. Taking a look at this here, we can see that there's a lot of vorticity on the map, but we also see these wind barbs moving in a counterclockwise, or not a counterclockwise, a clockwise formation. My bad, clockwise formation right here. This indicates that we do have a high pressure, the Bermuda High, typical Bermuda High as it always does, and it's relatively strong here for the most part. It's forcing a lot of this activity to either stay south of it or stay away from it in this instance. So, if we continue to progress here further and further through time into this weekend, that high pressure system will eventually move further and further westward, and it will continue to try and force this tropical system, which here is Invest 99L as it gains more and more vorticity, into the general vicinity of the central to western portions of the Gulf of Mexico. And for most people who might be wondering why it's not heading into the peninsula, let's draw again where the high pressure system is and where the motion of the wind shear around the high pressure system actually is at. So we'll draw a line here. There is the wind shear. And you can see the wind shear even extends a little bit further out to it. And so the general guiding motion is this general pathway, this general track. And so as this continues to move on forward, further towards the north and west, it'll get caught up by that wind shear, and it will continue to move northwestward rather than move north or even northeast. So basically this high pressure system is steering it away from the peninsula of Florida. It's steering it away from the Bahamas. It's steering it away from the East Coast. So that's the big thing there, is that areas along the East Coast and the Florida Peninsula most likely will not get impacted by the center of this tropical system. As this continues to unfold further and further, now it's going to have a lot more of these warm and unstable waters to work with, because you have a lot of above average sea surface temperatures over here. And we can look at that by looking at the sea surface temperatures over here for the Gulf of Mexico. Now, of course, there's these areas here in blue and green, and these are below average sea surface temperatures. But the big thing here to watch out for is that once you get closer and closer to land, it's starting to become more and more warmer. And the sea surface temperatures are getting hotter and hotter. You even have some areas here along the coastline of Texas all the way to Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama. Some sea surface temperatures over there can be in upwards of 2 to 3 degrees in Celsius above average. That is very hot, very hot. And if we take a look over here at the oceanic temperature, just the regular temperature without the anomalies, we have a lot of these browns. And what most people in the tropical weather community generally have figured out is that whenever you have temperatures here that is indicated in brown, which is usually 29 degrees Celsius and above, that's when you know that you could have the potential for a strong tropical system that could potentially even rapidly intensify into a major tropical system. Of course, my prediction as of right now is, as a floor, this thing will become a hurricane once it gets into the Gulf of Mexico. If it approaches the Yucatan Peninsula and Cuba, I don't think it'll be a hurricane. I think it'll be a high-end tropical storm. But once it gets into the Gulf of Mexico, I think it definitely could be a hurricane, and maybe even a strong hurricane as it approaches the coastline. That's the big thing. That's the big concern, is that once it's over these very warm waters, it'll have a lot of area to where it could suck up that warm moisture, basically become a lot more consolidated, gather a lot more showers and thunderstorms. And if it can gather a lot more showers and thunderstorms towards the center of low pressure, basically its eye, that's when it can continue to intensify further and further and further. And that's when we can talk about rapid intensification. And we hear this all the time along the news. So people are like, well, rapid intensification? What the heck is that? And that's when a system can intensify significantly within the span of 18 to 24 hours, specifically within along the lines of 60 miles per hour, 60, 65, 70 miles per hour, which is about 50 to 60 knots, maybe even up to 65 knots within the span of 18 to 24 hours. And that is very, very significant. That is very significant intensification, and that could flip a switch on an intensity and make everything lopsided. It can go it can take a situation from a not so serious situation to a significant serious situation, a particularly dangerous situation, if you will. So the big thing here is that its track into the Gulf of Mexico is certain, but its track once it gets into the Gulf of Mexico is not. And we're taking a look at the spaghetti models here. This is basically, this is a model run here from one model, the GEFS. But if you think of it this way, as if there's a club, and then they have a bunch of club members that talk about their own different opinions as to where this thing can go, that's what these lines are. These little lines are every single member, to where they talk about where this thing could potentially go and how strong it could potentially be. And you can see here a very widespread area of where this could potentially make landfall. Very widespread area extending from the border of Texas and Mexico all the way through towards near Mobile, Alabama, Pensacola, Florida. And so this is a very widespread area here, as well as the widespread strengths of intensity. If we take a look at the color code here on the right-hand side, this gives you an idea as to what the system could be in millibars, the lowest pressure in millibars. And if we take a look at that and relate it to wind speeds, this can tell you how strong a tropical system could potentially be. So for people who may not know, areas here from the blue to the yellow, that could be a tropical storm strength. Once you get into the yellow, that's a strong tropical storm strength. Then oranges to red, light red specifically, that's about category 1 to even category 2 strength. Dark red is about category 3, and then even towards the kind of this cherry color to maybe even strawberry color. I don't know what you would call that color. But once you get into this color right here, that's when you can start talking about category 3 to even category 4 strength. Pink is about category 4 strength, and then maybe even the pink to the kind of lavender and even dark blue colors, that's about category 4 to category 5. Blue would probably have to be category 5 in that instance, but the thing here is that if this does hit areas near Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama, they're anticipating this to not be as significant than areas to where if it was to hit Texas, it would not be as significant as areas over there. So really something to watch out for as to where this potentially track could be. And people might be asking, well, why is that the case? Why is areas over here in Louisiana not as strong as areas over here near Texas? And if you think about it here, the answer is quite simple, actually. It's because the pathway in which this tropical system actually travels over, it actually takes a lot longer for it to be over water going to Texas rather than going to Louisiana. It has a lot more of that warm, moist air, has a lot of those warm sea surface temperatures. It doesn't have as much friction when it encounters land, because everyone, I'm pretty sure, knows, or if they don't know, when a system hits land, it weakens a little bit or it disorganizes it a bit. And so if it's over water longer, it ends up allowing itself to gather more and more character and structure and intensity than shorter periods of time. So the big thing there is that if this does progress, where will it go? And how long is it over water for? Because that can easily determine as to what type of impacts you are going to get, as well as how strong the system could be. So that's the reason why I say that the area to where it could make landfall is not set in stone. But what most likely is set in stone is that this could be a strong tropical cyclone. I personally believe that at minimum, this will be a Category 1 hurricane. I believe personally that it will reach sustained winds of 75 miles per hour. Some other models, however, think it could reach, winds and upwards of, say, 130 to 135 miles per hour. That's at the high end of the scale. But the big thing here is that we have a potential hurricane, which most likely could be a hurricane, most likely will be a hurricane, and it may even be greater than a Category 1 hurricane making landfall somewhere here in the Gulf of Mexico. And that's if this thing does have some rapid intensification in here, which is likely, very likely. This thing could easily intensify significantly within this time period because of the warm waters that it will be over. If it's over those warm waters for an extended period of time, it could rapidly intensify within a period of 18 to 24 hours and gather 60 to 70 mile per hour winds within that time period. That's what rapid intensification does, is it intensifies significantly over that period of time and basically flips the switch on everything, flips the script completely. It takes a situation, as I mentioned, from a not as concerning situation to a very concerning, particularly dangerous situation. So that's the big thing there. If you were to ask me specifically as to where this landfall would be, all right? This is my own personal opinion. This is not the National Hurricane Center's. This is not, other models or whatever. I do not represent anybody else besides myself, okay? So however way you judge me as a trustworthy source, that is up to you. But my personal opinion, I think somewhere in central Louisiana could potentially be the landfall area, somewhere near Lafayette. It can go a bit further west, it could go a bit further east. But personally, I think somewhere in there. But according to the models, it could be anywhere here within the United States, in the northwestern to central portions of the Gulf of Mexico. It's possible for a tropical storm to gain strength if it forms into a big tropical cyclone. Yep, I definitely think that if it has enough time to stay over warm waters, doesn't have dry air, doesn't have a lot of wind shear pushing thunderstorms away from it, then yeah, it definitely could. Will Jamaica be safe? As of right now, I do think you guys could be spared from this significant tropical activity. I do think flash flooding is definitely a potential for you all. And if we go over to the precipitation, as this tropical system begins to try and form here within the next 24 hours, you can see that there's a lot of showers and thunderstorms that start to form near Jamaica. And so I would definitely want to watch out for it. I definitely would. But I do not think that this thing will intensify significantly within your general area. I think you guys should be fine for the most part. And right there is Jamaica. We're using another model that looks at the worst case scenario. And you can see, even though you went through a lot of strong showers and thunderstorms, if I were to ask you guys, the chat, as to whether or not this thing looks significant or not, I mean, you see a couple pinks, you see a couple reds, but it doesn't look like a classic hurricane, right? And that's kind of what I'm banking off of as well, too. And then, of course, what it would look like to be rather significant. This is what it looks like over the Atlantic and how it becomes, like that classic hurricane feature that I was talking about. So, as I said, this compared to this doesn't look as significant. So that's the good news in that, aspect. But I still think flash flooding could be a concern. I definitely think flash flooding could be a concern. If it hits that side of Louisiana, how far could the storm reach from side to side? Is it possible to see heavy rainfall in Houston, maybe even as far east as eastern Mississippi? Yeah, I definitely think it could be possible. I definitely think it could be possible. According to some models, the width of the actual system would be about 325 to 350 miles wide. That's just the rain swath of this thing. So you guys definitely could get some scattered showers and thunderstorms within your area, but probably not super significant. The eye of Harvey went right through your town. Was sheesh. Glad you guys are fine. Or at least you're fine, I should say. But sheesh. As I said, I will be covering this storm more and more in depth as we continue to get closer and closer towards the area of interest, towards landfall. It's expected to make landfall on as early as Sunday evening, and as far late as Tuesday morning. Okay. So I will continue to make videos. I will continue to make live streams. So if you want to stay tuned to my channel, I'm going to be trying to give you guys the most accurate information as I possibly can, as well as, of course, my own opinions on the matter. Please stay tuned to the channel. Subscribe if you are new and turn on notifications, as well as share this with people who might be interested in this content, because I'm pretty sure most of you, well, some of you who may have paid attention to my channel, you guys might have actually known for quite some time, but some of you who may have seen my channel for the first time, maybe some of you didn't know that this stuff was going to happen. And maybe some of you are questioning why, some other news agencies aren't talking about it. That's because I try to get the information out as early as possible when I know things could actually happen. And I try to, potentially help people and save some lives. And that's the big thing here. That's the premise of the channel here. The premise of the channel is we try to help each other. So, will the storm get up to Ontario, Canada? Probably not. Probably not. But it definitely could go up there. I'd have to say against it, though. Do I think that they should invent a PDS hurricane watch or warning for areas that might get a bullseye for a violent hurricane? No, probably not, because they have evacuation orders for that reason. Mandatory evacuations. And hurricane warnings are just hurricane warnings for the most part. They'll tell you the risks that they'll get in the hurricane warning. But yeah. I really do appreciate everyone who's came out to the channel this evening. I really do. Great turnout that we've had this evening. And yeah, as I said, this system is definitely something to watch out for. Another thing too here is if you want to help share the information as best as you possibly can, please be sure to hit that like button. Hitting the like button actually gets this video onto YouTube's algorithm, and it shares it manually. It shares it to more and more people. So if we hit the like button more and more, you're actually helping me get the information out as efficiently as I possibly can. So thank you guys so much for doing that. But yeah, that's the thing here. That's the main part of the stream. We've been talking about how this thing most likely will become a hurricane as it approaches the Gulf of Mexico, and how it could create some pretty strong impacts within here, some of which could be major. What do I see this becoming in your honest opinion? Predicting this to be a 3, but could be higher or less, who knows? As I said, the bottom... I definitely think at minimum this will become a Category 1 hurricane. At minimum. Within its lifespan in the Gulf of Mexico, it'll become a Category 1 hurricane. If you're asking me as to what specifically it will be in regards to intensity, it's very hard to say, okay? First off, it's very hard to predict intensity. However, if you were to put me on the spot, take this with a grain of salt. Take this with a grain of salt. But I'd have to say probably a 100 and... God. This is really hard. 125 mile per hour storm, probably. Might even be stronger. But it's... me knowing rapid intensification like it does probably will be stronger than that if it does be the worst case scenario. But I just... As of right now, that's just my... That's just me spewing words. Take it with a grain of salt. My best answer for you right now is it will definitely be a hurricane once it gets into the Gulf of Mexico. Where it goes from there, very difficult to tell. Very difficult to tell. But I think it's reasonable to say something like that. When will it impact land? Sometime Sunday night into Tuesday morning. It's very hard for me to say specifically then because it depends upon where it hits. It's very hard for me to say because most of the models don't exactly know where the beginning of the storm actually is. However, if it hits somewhere near Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, we can expect sometime on Sunday night into Monday morning. And then if it hits somewhere near Texas or even Mexico, I would say sometime around Monday afternoon to Monday evening and even Tuesday morning. So sometime around that. 125 is a category 3. But yeah, that's the time frame there. That's the reason why I'm trying to get the information out as early as possible. Trying to, help as many people as possible. Trying to get as much information out as possible. All right, that's the big thing. So, yeah, as I said, I'll be covering it over and over again. I'm going to have another live stream tomorrow evening, another tropical update, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, 5:30 p.m. Central Daylight Time. And I'll be live streaming for quite some time after that. Usually I live stream until like 8 or 9 Eastern. Something like that. Of course, it's around 9 Central right now, 10 Eastern. So I probably should be wrapping it up here soon. But yeah, I'll probably live stream again tomorrow evening. And then I also upload videos every single morning. So if you want updates with that as well, feel free to do so. You have a prediction of what cat it might be? As I said, at minimum, it's going to be a Category 1 hurricane. All right, that's what I believe. I firmly believe that it will become a Category 1 hurricane by the time it gets into the Gulf of Mexico. But as of, the prediction that I said, a 125 mile per hour hurricane that I told everyone to take with a grain of salt, that's a Category 3. But as I said, it's very hard to tell right now because it depends upon where it actually heads off to. If it heads off into Texas, it'll be stronger than that. But I'm anticipating this to head towards Louisiana, and that's the reason why I said 125. Trying to generate that low-level circulation right now? Yeah. It's very close to doing so, too. Here, let's go to the water vapor imagery. The thing about it is right now is that it doesn't have enough southwesterlies to really be designated at the moment. And that's the reason why things are not exactly anticipated to form just yet. And we'd have to wait another 18 to 24 hours before it does so. Yeah, 713 is actually a storm chaser, guys. I mean, he's a little on the young side, but yeah, he's a storm chaser as well. Go infrared satellite? I definitely can. Hold up. Let's go. Let's change true color off. Oh, true color actually shows a really good image here. Look at that. True color actually shows that it might even be trying to close off its southwestern side. It definitely looks more like a tropical wave, though, as of right now. But, I mean, I can't ignore the northerly component of those showers and thunderstorms right there. I cannot. It definitely looks really interesting, to say the least. Will this cross over to Jamaica? Well, I mean, here's the center of the system right here, and here is Jamaica right up there. And I definitely think it could get near Jamaica, creating some potential flash flooding. I don't think it's going to be, you know, like a significant tropical system by the time it gets there. It's still in its infancy at the moment. Do storm chasers make money? Sometimes, maybe. Should you evacuate if it's a Cat 4? I mean, you can if you want to, but just know that Matt is probably going to head in, and he's probably going to, he's probably going to get hit by it. Yeah, as I said, Jamaica is not going to be impacted significantly by this. Jamaica's going to be fine. They're just going to get a lot of potential flooding, a lot of showers and thunderstorms, just like what they're doing right now. A lot of showers and thunderstorms over there. When do the hurricane hunters go into the storm? Tomorrow. Actually, if you guys want to know specifically, I can pull that up here for you. I got the potential flight plans. Cool stuff. Big time stuff. Oh, goodness. Plan of the day tomorrow. Atlantic requirements. Suspect area, Western Caribbean Sea. They have Flight 1 TL71, which is going out tomorrow at 20 Z. So that'd be 3 Central, 4 Eastern, is when they're expecting around the time in which this thing would take off. So when we live stream tomorrow night, we will actually have the hurricane hunters live into the storm. So, we'll have our information here for you all, and we'll be able to see the thing live as it continues to progress. So feel free to come back tomorrow as well. And then Flight 2 is on Friday morning, be 7 a.m. is when they're anticipating that flight. This will be an upper-level reconnaissance mission, so this would be Gonzo. This will be Gonzo up there. So they're going to basically going to sample the environment out in front of the system. They're going to put all sorts of little machines in the air that's going to fly through the sky. And it's going to basically tell them what the temperature is, what the humidity is, what the wind shear is, all sorts of stuff like that. So that these models that we have will have a better idea as to what's going to happen as this continues to get closer and closer towards the Gulf of Mexico. Or even as it gets into the Gulf of Mexico. That's the thing there. And then they have another reconnaissance mission leaving at the same exact time. This is going to be one that's relatively close to the ground. So I believe this might either be Miss Piggy or Kermit. That's what they named their flights over there from NOAA. And then they're going to have the Air Force going out, I believe, at 2 separate times, maybe. So one in the morning, as I mentioned, at about 7 Central. And then another possibly at 1. It'd be about 1 o'clock, right? 1 o'clock to 2 o'clock, sometime around then. Suspected area, quite strong for a word choice, yeah. I mean, as of right now, they have to say suspect area, because that's basically what it is in this instance. It's a area to watch, invest, if you will. Do I see the heat lightning outside? No, I do not. No, I do not. I saw lightning earlier. Let me eat a couple of my Sour Patch Kids here real quickly. You're right on the other side, up 45 a little bit, like 10 minutes. Birthday is Tuesday. Cannot do this again this year. Last year we had the shutters on. Yeah, the system, if it does hit you, unfortunately, then that'll be pretty bad, but let's just pray that this isn't as significant as most of the models think it will be. That's the best thing to do there. Alrighty. Let's see. Yeah, the big thing here. Let's take a look at the guidance here for the most part, model guidance. And yeah, most of these models think that this will probably be a strong tropical system. As I said, minimum hurricane, minimum category 1 hurricane as it approaches the coast. Are expecting rapid intensification. There's a good likelihood that it could happen here in the Gulf of Mexico. It's got to get over there first. The system is not exactly designated at the moment, but has a high chance of formation, and it most likely will form within the next 24 hours, in my honest opinion. Just the tropical wave looks pretty good. As a matter of fact, within the next 48 hours, I think this is a recent update, because I didn't see this before, but within the next 48 hours, there is a 60% chance of formation. So, very, very decent chance that this thing will end up forming here soon. And as I said, most likely we'll head off somewhere towards either Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, or Alabama. I personally think Louisiana is the case. I personally think Louisiana would be the case. How have the models been trending over the past few runs? It's been trending further and further east. So we'll take a look at the HWRF model, and you can see right here where it is anticipated to make landfall. They actually think somewhere near Lake Charles is the case. I personally think somewhere near Lafayette, maybe Morgan City, somewhere around here is where they could potentially make landfall. But they think that this will be the system that'll do it, and they think it'll be a Category 4. This is the HWRF model, so as I said, worst case scenario indicator right here. Then if we go back to another model run here, we'll go to the GFS, and we'll show you how the GFS has progressed it over time. The GFS thinks that this thing will end up being a Category 3 hurricane. I think this is what it looks like. That's not helpful. Thank you, GFS. I really do appreciate it. Give me a second. There we go. So it looks like... Let's see if I can take a sounding here. Yeah, there we go. So it looks like, according to the GFS here, it'd be a little under, maybe around 100 miles per hour, something like that. I think that's more or less the case. So yeah, probably Category 2, according to the GFS, maybe Category 3. If we take a look at the HMON here, this is another model that predicts rapid intensification. They think that this will be a Category 3 hurricane upon its approach or something like that. Here, let's take a look. 109 miles per hour, which, yeah, that's Category 3 hurricane status. 109 knots, I should say, into miles per hour. And so they think it's a 937 lowest millibar pressure on its approach towards the East Coast, of course. And they also think that the landfall will be somewhere near Lake Charles. But I think it'll make landfall somewhere over here. Pretty high likelihood, in my honest opinion, that it will. And that this is most likely going to continue to stay the case. Now, I haven't seen the para. I want to take a look at the HWRF para model. And that's yeah, 117 knots. So that's about what the other HWRF model said. So 117 knots is 135 miles per hour. So yeah, that's pretty strong storm there. if that's the case. As I said, the HWRF model is kind of like the worst case scenario indicator. So I wouldn't exactly trust it as the, I wouldn't exactly trust it as the set in stone model, if you will. But I definitely think that this could potentially be pretty significant if it gets its time over the open warm waters, because there's so much energy for this thing. There's so much energy for this thing to continue to intensify further and further. It's not even funny. So, yeah, we're going to have to continue to watch out for this. As I said, if you know anyone who lives in these areas here, from the border of Mexico and Texas, all the way over to Pensacola, Florida, anywhere within this area right here, and even further inland, probably somewhere within here, please share this live stream or share my channel with them, because I'm going to be giving them more and more information. If you guys come back out tomorrow evening, I will have another live stream for you all discussing the changes of the models here. And I will be providing you guys as much information as I possibly can. I'll try and make it as accurate as possible. Of course, I'll incorporate my opinions every now and then, but I'll say when it's my opinion. You know, I'm trying to get the word out as much as I possibly can here. All right. You know, it's not about the money. Of course, it might be a little bit about subscribers too, because I love having a larger community that, of course, loves to come to me for information. I would love that, but I think it's more or less, it's not exactly I think. I know it's more or less because I want to get the information out as much as possible. So, yeah, as I said, if you know anyone who lives over there, show them my channel. Feel free to subscribe and turn on notifications, because if you turn on notifications, you stay up to date with all my content, and I'll be able to provide you the most up-to-date information and accurate as I possibly can, as much as possible. But yeah, that's the thing there. That's the thing with this, is that it has such a wide area to where this could potentially make landfall. And it has such a high upside to where it could be potentially very strong, and it could potentially be somewhat of a Category 1 hurricane-esque, if you know what I mean. I want to take a look here real quickly, and I know the para model actually helps out with this here, so I'll be able to look at this a little bit more in depth with what the rapid intensification model says here. And we're going to go back to what we were talking about with the GFS before. So what we're looking at here, I should say, before I start out with what the GFS said, we're taking a look at the 500 millibar geopotential height, as well as the cyclonic vorticity, which is all the sorts of colors. So if you see a bunch of these reds and oranges consolidate together into like this giant spiral or even just a circle, that's when you know that you have a tropical system on your hands. And then, of course, the wind barbs, which indicate the wind shear around the system. So basically the steering flow as to where it will push the system, or even the general areas as to whether or not it could hamper the system by creating a lot of wind shear. So let's play this through. And what the GFS said is that this will end up propagating further northward, similar to what the HWRF model said. But the thing that we're going to want to pay attention to here, for the most part, is this area right here, this giant circle. And this shows you a high-pressure system creating a lot of clockwise shear. A lot of clockwise shear. That's the wind pattern. So the wind is flowing within the pathway of these arrows. And it's creating this general steering flow that's pushing it towards the north and west. And that's the reason why areas over here in the Florida Peninsula most likely will not be impacted by this tropical system. It's because you have that high pressure system that's pushing it away from the actual coastline of Florida. So that's the good news there. But then as this continues to progress further and further in time, notice how the circle gets closer and closer into the coast and actually goes over the Carolinas. So notice here, you have that wind shear that's still steering it off to the north and west. but it's starting to get a little bit stronger as it gets closer and closer to the coast, and starting to push it further and further and further away into areas here of Louisiana, which is the reason, as I said, why I don't think Florida will be impacted for the most part. Now, if this high pressure system isn't as far west as it says with this model, then that's the reason why I said there's a little bit of room here for areas in the western panhandle of Florida, as well as areas near Alabama and Mississippi, for it to potentially go a bit further northward and maybe even impact over there. But the general consensus that I personally believe is that somewhere over here near Lafayette, as well as Lake Charles, maybe even Houston and Beaumont, I think over there is where the highest likelihood of landfall possibly is, within that general vicinity. Maybe even Grand Isle if this thing continues to turn a bit further and further eastward. But my area, if you were to tell me to put a dot exactly where I think the landfall would be, it would be a little bit further to the east of where this model thinks it would be landfall. Somewhere, if I were to turn it back to the wind here, it would be somewhere right about here. So the landfall, of course, is a little bit further to the west, but I personally think it'll be a little bit further to the east, somewhere near, I'd say, maybe Morgan City or Lafayette, somewhere right around there. But of course, things are going to change, most likely. Models are destined to change, and forecasts are, well, unless if I somehow manage to get the forecast correct, which, you know, I hope that I do not. I hope that it's actually much weaker than what models suggest, although that doesn't seem to be the case here. Then most likely forecasts will change. But that's the big thing here. It most likely will impact somewhere in the northwestern portions and central portions of the Gulf of Mexico. So we're trying to get as much information out as possible in this instance because there's just so much here. Is 99L going to be Ida? I personally think it most likely will. I think it most likely will. Because I think this system will form earlier than the system in the middle of the Atlantic. But if it doesn't become Ida, it'll be Julian. But I think there's a good chance that this thing will become Ida, and it probably will be a hurricane. As a matter of fact, I have a very high confidence that it'll be a hurricane once it gets into the Gulf of Mexico and propagate further towards the north and west, towards the coastline of the Gulf of Mexico. Now, the potential for this thing to rapidly intensify is there, and as a matter of fact, most of the models that try and indicate rapid intensification are kind of sounding the alarms here. But the rapid intensification period, the one thing that I did realize here is that that period of rapid intensification seems to be as it gets closer and closer towards the coastline. So that's what they indicate, meaning that the progression might be gradual at first. It might not actually be instantaneous once it gets into the Gulf of Mexico. But I think once it gets into the Gulf of Mexico, it'll be, even if it's on a gradual trend, gradual uptrend, I think that it'll be a hurricane in the early stages. And then, as I mentioned, you know, as I said, take this prediction with a grain of salt, but I think it could be a, you know, if it does hit the area that I think it will hit, a 125 mile per hour category 3 hurricane upon landfall. It could definitely be stronger. If it rapidly intensifies even stronger than, you know, most models and people think it will, then yeah, definitely, definitely could. But you're new? Well, feel free to stick around on the channel. We may be towards the end of the live stream here, but we will have another live stream tomorrow discussing the potential for this thing as it continues to move on through. Of course, I try to provide the best information as possible, and I try to, you know, make it as accurate as possible. And so I realized that there was most likely going to be a hurricane that's going to head into the Gulf of Mexico. Decided to live stream about it. That's what my channel's built off of. My channel's built off of me trying to get the information out and trying to help people and potentially even save some lives. And so if you feel like you want to stick around with the channel, I talk about weather, talk about severe weather, I talk about tropical weather for right now because, you know, we're starting to get towards the peak of hurricane season. Which, by the way, we're not even at the peak of hurricane season. You guys thought that this was the peak. The peak of hurricane season is September 10th to 11th. That's the peak. The time in which we're supposed to have the most activity in the Atlantic. And we're at August 25th right now. So we're not even near the peak right now. So all the more reason why you guys should stick with me as this continues to move on through. Yeah, I personally don't believe that it'll get to the panhandle of Florida, but I decided to include it just in the off chance that the high pressure system does not go as far west as it does. I personally think that the peninsula of Florida is out. I think they're not going to be impacted whatsoever. I think there's a small chance for the system to make landfall near Pensacola, but I think that it definitely could. It still has a possibility. And then once you get closer and closer towards, you know, central Louisiana, I do think that'll be a higher and higher likelihood. But yeah, very interesting to say the least. Very interesting to say the least. I definitely will be watching this very, very closely. The one thing I do have to note is that the wind shear with this high pressure is not as strong. It's not too strong. Let's go to the upper dynamics. Take a look at the 250 millibar wind shear. And even though you have, well, that's actually not really going to tell us a whole lot, is it? Let's go to the 500 millibar vorticity. There you go. Probably just the best way to do it. Probably the best way to do it in this instance. The wind shear here from this high pressure system is only anticipated to be 15 to 20 knots. So I know 20 knots can be pushing it, but that's just a little bit, you know, a little bit further south combined with the flow of the cyclone. So dry air is not anticipated to be a huge factor once it gets into the Gulf of Mexico. As of right now, of course, there's a little bit of dry air around it. So it'll have to contend with thunderstorm development for the most part, especially on the northwestern side of the system. It'll have to encounter that dry air, and whether or not it'll continue to form showers and thunderstorms is the big question. And if that question is answered, if it can fend off that dry air, we can talk about a tropical system forming a little bit earlier. If it can't, it's just a delayed process before this thing ends up getting into the Gulf of Mexico, not dealing with as much wind shear, even though you do have some strong wind shear from this upper level low that's moving on through. But the good news is that, well, actually I should say the bad news is that this low pressure system is expected to weaken, and so the wind shear will continue to weaken as well, and the system will break through all of that, basically making it a little bit easier for this thing to form and potentially even rapidly intensify. So yeah. Ports of Funnel Cloud and Palm Beach, Florida. Sent you the report via Twitter. Yeah, let's take a look at Twitter. I haven't been on Twitter in a while. Which, by the way, I'm really close to 1,000 followers over there. Sheesh! Look at how many notifications we got there. Look at that. There's a bunch of notifications over here. Yeah, there's a bunch of notifications. Sheesh. Yeah, there's the spotter report right there. By the way, if you guys do want to follow my Twitter, as I said, I'm very close to 1,000 followers, so if you want to help me get up there, feel free to do so. Follow my Twitter. I upload some updates every now and then that people don't exactly see on stream. So if you want to do so, link is in the chat. So that's what that's what I was thinking, hurricane discussion, which is the reason why rapid intensification in my mind is a lot more likely. But of course, it's very hard to predict in this instance because not only are you really far out, but it's also very very unpredictable, I think, as most people know. But yeah, definitely could see this as a major hurricane if it gets the opportunity to. That's kind of funny. Let's turn that off. As I said, hurricane hunters are expected to go tomorrow evening, 7 oh, not 7, Jesus. Excuse me. Jeez. 4 Eastern, 3 Central, sometime around then. And then multiple missions the next day, including upper air reconnaissance and a couple surface reconnaissance there as well. Can I do a day 4? Sheesh. Fine, I'll take a look at day 4 here. Day 4, severe weather. So there is a severe weather threat up here. Anytime it's up in the Midwest, I know it's damaging winds. Anytime it's in the Midwest, I know it's damaging winds. So let's take a look. And if it is damaging winds, then it probably won't need big of a threat. So there's your threat there. Take a sounding around it. Enlarged Toto, but you have a lot of capping inversion at the surface, so... I mean, you might have some sporadic showers and thunderstorms that could potentially create some tornadic cells, but a lot of capping inversion, a lot of limiting factors in the atmosphere with that. So, yeah. I mean, I'd have to continue to watch out for it. I might make a video on it, but I think I'm probably going to continue to make tropical weather videos. Yeah, I agree. That mission's going to be really interesting. Okay, final thoughts here on this live stream. First off, as I said, thank you guys so much for coming out to the live stream. I really do appreciate all the support that you guys have. We're at 13,456 subscribers at the moment. My goal at the end of August is actually 13,500. So if you guys keep going at the rate that we're going now, we might actually crush that. Especially with us probably going to live stream the landfall of this tropical system, whether it's Ida, whether it's Julian. I guess we won't know until we see it from the National Hurricane Center themselves. But we do know that this tropical system will head into the Gulf of Mexico, and we will be live streaming it. We will have all sorts of coverage, radar, satellite, hurricane hunters, 3D analysis. Even if it makes landfall around where my storm chaser is expected to go to, we might even have a storm chaser to show us the live conditions of what all is happening there. So, if you guys want to stay tuned, feel free to do so. As I said, subscribe and turn on notifications for all the latest content. And thank you so much. So, final thoughts, as I mentioned. First things first, this is a pretty gnarly tropical wave that has been progressing through the Atlantic Basin for quite some time. Of course, the monsoon gyre at the moment is really cranking here along Central America, creating an enhanced area of moisture in Central America. And so this is going to basically add to the extra moisture of the tropical wave as it moves on forward towards the north and west. It's expected to form into a tropical system within the next 5 days, an 80% chance of doing so within the next 5 days, 60% chance of the next 24 to 48 hours. And I actually think it will most likely form within that time period as time continues to progress. And then as it heads into the Gulf of Mexico. So within its time period of it being in the Gulf of Mexico, I wholeheartedly believe 100% will become a hurricane. As I said, will become a Category 1 hurricane at minimum. It could definitely be higher than that. As a matter of fact, as I mentioned, I said take this with a grain of salt, but if it does make landfall where I think it will make landfall, which is somewhere near Lafayette or Morgan City in Louisiana, I said preliminary, and I said preliminary, take this with a grain of salt, 125 mile per hour Category 3 hurricane. That's what I said. You can quote me all you want, but it's just the upside for the system is too high. I needed to be able to, feel comfortable in saying that it probably will rapidly intensify and it'll be pretty strong heading on forward. But there has been some models that said that once it does continue to move off into the Gulf of Mexico, could potentially be making landfall as high as a Category 4 hurricane. Maybe, higher or lower within some of those areas as well. But just take a look at the tracks here from the GEFS. It's very hard to tell as to where specifically it'll make landfall. But as of right now, as far west or even as far south as the border of Texas and Mexico to as far east as Pensacola, Florida, you guys need to be on alert because sometime on Sunday afternoon, I'll say Sunday afternoon because you guys could be experiencing tropical storm and hurricane force conditions even prior to landfall. Sometime on Sunday afternoon to Tuesday morning, that's when you can expect your conditions to be at its peak and potentially have your landfall right within that general vicinity. So guys really need to watch out for this as this continues to move about. And we could be potentially talking about a very strong storm as it continues to move on through and progress further into the Gulf of Mexico. Of course, there's also going to be some extra tropical activity after this. There's other areas in the Atlantic that have actually been designated as areas of interest or even invests. And there's even models afterwards that say that there could potentially be more areas to watch, with even one potentially being in the Caribbean again, sometime around August 31st to September 1st. So we'll have to watch out for that as well. Of course, things are subject to change. It's not exactly set in stone, but we're still going to watch out for that as much as possible. And I'll be trying to keep you guys up to date as much as I possibly can. So thank you guys for coming out to the live stream. As I said, really do appreciate it. And if you want to stay tuned, feel free to do so. As I said, feel free to subscribe to the channel. Feel free to turn on notifications. And feel free to share this with other people who may think this information is actually useful to them. And I will continue to update you guys tomorrow morning in my video. So peace out, everyone, and take care. Thank you guys so much for watching. Stay safe, everyone.